Belias is a grand duchy in the northernmost region of the empire. A tender young girl looked sadly at the snowstorm raging outside the window. Today, here in this kingdom of cold, she became a wife. The owner of this place is Archduke Varsbelias, a highly respected hero, and at the same time a killer who is feared by everyone. As a 9-year-old child, he himself buried his father, who died in battle. He spent 2 years pretending to be a war orphan, scavenging horse manure from the man who killed his father. Eventually, Vars was able to win his trust, and then he showed his whole essence towards him. After many years of hidden pain and suffering, he brutally avenged his father's death. For a long time, he was criticized as dishonest, but this did not bother him much, because it was he who led all the Empire's wars to victory, and he spent the next 16 years of his life on the battlefield. But he had one problem that really scared those around him. When the full moon began, a real bloodthirsty beast would awaken within him, and then he killed everyone who got in his way. This is how he began to be called a war hero and, at the same time, a bloodthirsty killer. And she, Selena, became Archduchess Belias today. On this cold winter day, she married this cruel murderer. Even during the wedding ceremony, the man's gaze was extremely frightening. But why did Vars, who any princess or noblewoman was ready to marry, just have to ask, choose her? Why did he decide to choose Selena, an orphan whose only dowry was her name, as his wife? Maybe it's because she's such an incredible beauty. Or because he fell in love with her at first sight. No, he and love are completely different things. Vars just wanted a woman who would always wait for him at home, even if he stopped communicating. Since today, after the first night, Vars is going to lock his Archduchess in her room for the rest of her days. It is interesting how she herself knows all this. Actually, it's all because of the novel she was reading. Even for a romantic fantasy, this is a bit too much, and this book is generally in the genre of dark tragedy. "Yumi, you're reading your novels again. They say they're going to read the script," her friend called out to her. And Yumi replied that she had just finished, but it wasn't interesting to read anyway. And when a friend asked what kind of novel it was, the girl replied that it was in the tragedy genre, and she doesn't like that kind of thing. She really didn't like such works, but she read them all anyway. Of course, even though she read it all the way to the end, it wouldn't help much because after today, she wouldn't even be able to leave her bedroom. And unfortunately, when she came to, the wedding was already over, and she was left to wait for Vars in the room. There is no way to escape. There is a blizzard outside. Plus, there is no money, no knowledge of the area, no ability to survive. And this body, although very beautiful, is too delicate. Even in those times when there was no money and she had to choke on just rice and seaweed, she still had more strength than she does now in this form. While waiting for her husband, Selena lay down on the bed, and although she understood that she was finished, her eyes were closing against her will. After some time, the door to the room opened and heavy footsteps were heard. The girl lay motionless, although she could clearly hear someone approaching the bed. That sound, that was Vars entering the bedroom, Selena thought fearfully. In the book, he was called the Archduke Monster, which is honestly a little disturbing. But is he really that scary? Selena looked straight and openly into the man's eyes. Varsbelias towered over the girl sitting on the bed like a mountain, and was very surprised by the way she looked at him. "What are you doing here?" He looked at her quite angrily, clearly not expecting to see. "Sorry, I just closed my eyes for a moment," Selena said apologetically, and thought that he didn't look like such a monster. And embarrassed, she promised to move over so that he could also lie down in bed. Vars's expression did not change. He continued to look seriously at his now wife. And under this stern gaze, the girl awkwardly moved to the edge of the bed. Now that he's in the room, it'll be hard for her to escape. Vars placed the kerosene lamp, which he had been holding in his hands all this time, on the table, and to the girl's great surprise, he ordered her to sleep, causing the girl to look at him in surprise. "Sleep," the man repeated, clearly not intending to explain anything. Selena didn't argue and quickly covered herself with the blanket up to her nose. She thought that he looked a little terrifying, but still very handsome, somewhat like a bear, so cute. And why in the original Selena fainted when she saw his face? With such thoughts, the girl fell asleep. Vars did not take his eyes off his new wife. Having settled down quite comfortably in their shared bed, the girl slept peacefully despite his presence. The man's fist clenched. He was torn between conflicting emotions. Now she is his wife, and he has big plans for her, but she just sleeps peacefully. The bright rays of the winter sun touched the face of the sleeping girl. Selena opened her eyes and stretched, shaking off the last of the sleep. She had slept very well that night. Noticing that she was alone in bed, the girl touched the place next to her. There was no sense of warmth, which meant Vars slept in another place. the girl thought with disappointment. She even felt some loneliness and did not understand why all this was happening, why it was necessary to sleep separately. It was only after the girl got out of bed and walked around the room that she noticed that she was not alone in the room. Varsbilius sat at the table fully dressed and looked attentively at the girl. His gaze was sharp, frightening, and did not express anything good, but Selina noticed that in the light of day, he was even more handsome. "I didn't notice that you were sitting here," the girl said, blushing, and her chest, clad in a tight slip, swayed slightly. The next moment, Selina herself realized how revealing her outfit was and who she was standing in front of. She instantly dove under the blanket, throwing off her slippers as she went. What should she do? She got married and is already in a man's house. Now she is really married. Exactly the same thoughts overwhelmed Varsbilius yesterday he got married. Many people are scared when they meet him and can't even look him in the eye. Even his servants tremble with fear, so he has no chance to create a normal family. And yet this poor woman married a one-eyed man who was nicknamed the Monster of War. However, yesterday, before going to bed, her gaze was so bright and open, it seemed that she was not afraid of him at all. And even now, the girl was afraid not of his frightening appearance, but of the awkward situation. She said, embarrassed, that she hadn't noticed him sitting in the room. "She's not afraid of me," the man thought again in surprise. Selina, embarrassed, covered the neckline. It was done as if she saw him as a man. Vars thought about all this painfully, but still came to the conclusion that this could not be. How could he even think of such utter stupidity? The man stood up from his seat, intending to leave the room. The huge shaking lump under the blanket moved slightly. Hearing sounds from the room, Selina carefully stuck her head out. It seems he left. The girl jumped out from under the blanket very quickly, hoping that he had left so that she could change her clothes. Without wasting a second, she opened the closet door, intending to do it after all. But the man turned out to be kinder than in the book. Would he suddenly start behaving more rudely and take her captive? Taking the first dress she came across, Selina hoped that this would never happen. Having decided that the dress was suitable, she thought about how to put it on, which holes to put her hand in, lamenting that she should have read the book more carefully. A few minutes later, the door to the room suddenly swung open and Varsbilius appeared on the threshold. The girl was almost fully dressed, and yet she shuddered in surprise. But the man walked past her, not paying any attention to his worried wife. He slowly approached the bed where she had recently been hiding, and taking out a small container from somewhere, he began to pour red liquid onto the bed linen. Blood. Selina sank to the floor, her legs suddenly unable to support her. What is this? Is he really going to summon a demon? Is this not just a book with a tragic plot, but a real horror story? And who is the victim, she thought with horror, and at that moment Vars looked at her with his terrifying gaze. Could she really be a victim? The girl literally froze in horror at the realization. "The floor is cold," the man said, holding out his hand to her. Selina, in surprise, only stared with wide eyes at the broad male palm extended towards her, and Vars asked her to take his hand because the floor she was sitting on was very cold. The girl didn't think long and gratefully extended her hand in response. A little embarrassed, the girl sincerely thanked him for his concern. At this point, Vars noticed that she was not fully dressed and offered to help her, to which the girl agreed, but she was still under the impression that she had held his hand. His hand was big and strong, the hand of a real man, and she could still feel its touch on her hand. He definitely looks like a bear. Selina was embarrassed by her thoughts and blushed red, while Vars was trying to help her button up her dress. But he too was overcome by disturbing thoughts, although just a second ago he had not thought about anything like that. The girl's back was small, white, so thin compared to his huge arms. And when she touched his hand, he had a feeling that he could break her. The man's large hands carefully pulled at the laces and then froze in place, each of them frozen in their own disconcerting thoughts. Selina tried to find out why he stopped and turned her head slightly. The man suddenly pulled at the laces of his dress because, frightening them both, there was a knock at the door. It was Anna, and she was allowed into the room. Head maid Anna volunteered to help Her Highness get ready. Selina smiled gratefully, happy for the unexpected help. The man's hand holding the thin laces reluctantly dropped. Vars watched with a little disappointment as his wife interacted with the maid. He felt some kind of emptiness inside himself without her. He felt anger in his soul at the thought of what if she closed and locked this door, but he didn't want her to slip away from him like that. A very embarrassed Selina stood quietly while Anna helped her get ready. Vars ordered the maid to prepare everything for Her Highness's dinner, and the servant bowed obediently. The next moment, Selina was left alone in the room, looking at the closed door in surprise. The girl still feels like there is a smell of blood in the air. That's why she decided to air out the room by opening the window to the street. Selena's room was quite high up, and her window offered an excellent view of the nearby village. The cold winter air was seeping inside, but it didn't bother her much. Everything had been just fine for her until last night. But in the original, Selene collapsed before her wedding night and was imprisoned. Vars publicly announced his retirement to devote himself to agriculture and visited Her Majesty's chambers every now and then. He didn't care about the condition of the 20-year-old girl who was so terrified that she couldn't look him in the eyes. For her, he was the most terrible beast. Selena wasn't immediately thrown into prison, as in the original story, and frankly, there was no hope for the girl in that situation. If not today, then she will never be able to escape from here, but hiding in a snowy state without any preparation is the same as dying. "I'm coming in." Vars knocked delicately on the door of his wife's room, but no one answered him, and besides, he felt a breath of winter wind. Then the man hurriedly opened the doors, fearing to see only an empty room. The girl simply sat on a chair in front of the open window, not paying attention to the blowing wind. "Isn't she cold?" the man wondered. He heard that she came from a warm region in the southwest of the country. Or maybe she likes the cool weather, it occurred to him. The girl heard someone enter the room and turned around in surprise. For a moment, she simply looked at Archduke Vars Belius as he approached her. It even became somehow sad that she was scared just by looking into his eyes. The man's face was like an actor's, and his charm was completely to her taste. And Vars remembered that there was no fear in the girl's eyes after all. "And I noticed that she missed lunch. Wasn't she hungry?" Selena almost laughed. The whole situation was reminiscent of a lion communicating with a little bunny when the big and scary lion tries to feed the baby. But still, laughter broke through the girl's closed lips, and Vars noticed it. He was shocked that she seemed to enjoy being asked if she was hungry. At this point, it is worth stopping and listening to the maid Anna on behalf of His Highness. His Highness had never had any dealings with women, as he had been on the battlefield since his youth, and had only attended a few receptions of the imperial family. But not a single lady had spoken to him. And if they did meet Vars's eyes, they immediately turned away in horror. Because the man literally radiated chilling horror. And because he only inspired fear, His Highness never spoke to a woman. Selena laughed and said she wanted to go outside. But then she closed her mouth in horror, afraid that she would be locked up for such insolence, because she had said this only under the influence of the situation, and the Archduke would never allow her to go out, although she really wanted to feel freedom. But Vars had no intention of locking her, but extended his large hand. The girl stared at the outstretched palm in surprise, not understanding what was happening. "Now, don't you have to get up to go outside?" he remarked, seeing the girl's indecision. After some time, Selena followed Vars, trying to keep up. She didn't understand whether it was necessary to dress like that. It was even difficult for her to walk in these clothes. And yet the girl liked that he personally helped her get dressed, and she even felt embarrassed at the memory of it. At that moment, the Archduke stopped and looked at her meaningfully. Selena took this as a hint that she was slow and should go faster. But the man only offered her his elbow for support. The girl stared at the man's strong hand and said nothing. Finally, she realized that he was offering her to take his arm, or maybe he just accidentally bent his arm that way, and she accidentally noticed. But she was still not sure, so she decided to do nothing. But she was beginning to worry because Vars kept looking at her, offering his elbow. Lieutenant Jarthain August told the Archduke that when a woman is wearing uncomfortable clothes, it is good manners to offer to hold her hand. And if a person does not experience burning hatred, then he will not refuse accompaniment. It can't be said that they became friends, but they were now spouses, and unlike others, she was not afraid of him. But what the hell was it that she refused to take his arm? In any case, he brought a woman here only to conceive a child, so why is he even worried about her? It would be better to just lock her up. From tomorrow, she will never see the light of day again. At that moment, Selena's foot tripped over a small protrusion in the corridor carpet, and with a loud, sharp scream, the girl began to fall to the floor. But before she could fall, Vars immediately jumped up and caught Selena. The girl was grateful that he had caught her, but at the same time, she was very embarrassed. Against her will, her hand touched the man's thigh, and she noticed that it was hard as a rock. Vars was also slightly embarrassed by the situation, although he managed to catch the falling girl. To do this, he had to put his arms around her, and he noticed that her waist was very thin, and she herself was so light that she weighed like a rabbit. I'll probably have to feed her up so she gains some fat before winter comes, hang more tapestries in the room, light a fireplace and insulate the windows. Sitting with his wife on the floor of the hallway, the man thought that she shouldn't go out. Vars Belius was a man who lived and died without knowing love. A poor man who was alone all his life and died without ever understanding what loneliness was, even though he was married to a beautiful girl. In the original story, Celine suffered from Stockholm Syndrome. The story tells that at some point she slowly but surely fell in love with Vars. And what about Vars, unfortunately? For him, Selina was just a woman who would give birth to his child. Reading this work in her world, the girl sincerely sympathized with the difficult fate of the heroes. However, now she seems to understand why Selina opened her heart to him. When she almost fell, he suddenly ran up to her with a surprised face and held her tightly with his hands. At that moment, she accidentally touched his strong thighs and chest. The woody scent coming from his neck made her head spin. Blushing from the surprise and awkwardness of the situation, the girl thought that he had wooden skin, although in fact this was not so. She knew it wouldn't be easy for her, but she didn't expect it to be that easy. In the original story, he was described as a scary monster, but in real life, Vars is so sweet, gentle, and attentive, completely her type. And if she continues to encounter him like this, she will fall in love with him, and not only because he is completely her type, but because she has never dated anyone before. The girl was painfully thinking about everything that was happening, and Vars again extended his hand to her. And he asked if it was so difficult for her to walk, then why didn't she take his hand? "Here you go," the man continued insistently, causing Selina to blush again, and she could no longer refuse him, and therefore extended her hand in response, thanking him for his care. Soon they came out into the cold, frosty air, and immediately steam began to come out of the girl's mouth. She looked around with delight, noting that this was truly a magnificent place. And even though it was dark and cold around, the girl breathed in the air of freedom with delight. The Archduke silently watched the girl, who was quite happy to be outside. He thought that it was still a long way from warm, so the sight was not pleasant. So what good did she find in this deserted place and gnarled branches? The Archduke watched the girl, her rapturous face, and then how she looked around at all this grayness. But she was really happy, and she was smiling, pleased that she was finally outside. Although Vars did not fully understand the reason for her good mood, he was pleased to look at her. Realizing his feelings, he blushed and quickly turned away, promising himself that he would not stare anymore. Selina realized at that moment that this was not a set. It looked like a real medieval one, which, in fact, it was. When she was in the theater company, she imagined that she was in Hollywood. But everything here is real. However, after that, her mood diminished and the smile disappeared from her face. What's the point of this landscape if she, like in the original, has to live locked up, unable to return to Korea? If she can't escape, she wants to at least capture this man's heart. She has never built a relationship, especially a romantic one, which made her sad. Vars also noticed the change in his wife's mood and became slightly worried. Why did she have such a dejected expression on her face? The man began to get irritated. Just a moment ago, she was rejoicing at the sight of the castle and the empty hills. The man approached the girl and pulled her hand quite roughly. Did it suddenly dawn on her that this monster was her husband? Selina looked at the Archduke in surprise at such a sudden movement. "It's time to go back," he said emotionlessly without explaining his behavior. Angry at himself, he turned around and headed towards the house. He brought her here, so why couldn't she even open her mouth? "Wait," Selina said, which actually made Vars stop. Embarrassed and unable to look at him, the girl asked him to take her hand. The man literally melted from her words. He was pleased by such attention from her, and he thought that a long stay in the cold could undermine her. Besides, she was not so hardy, and could fall from exhaustion on the way. At that moment, the man's head was filled with theatrical action, and the fragile girl fell from exhaustion and straight into his arms. And he, like a true gentleman, picks her up in his arms to carry her into the house. And in a soft voice, he promises that he will carry her if she gets sick. At such moments, in the opinion of the thoughtful man, one can walk arm in arm. It seemed to Vars that she could fall at any moment, but the girl walked quite confidently, to his great regret. The young people returned to the room where Anna had already lit the fireplace. They walked in silence, and Selina wondered why Vars was still silent. The man looked at the girl silently and attentively without saying a word. Selina felt the need to say something right now, otherwise it would be awkward. Such a peaceful atmosphere. the girl suddenly said, smiling tensely. Vars was surprised by her description of the situation and swallowed nervously. The Archduchess added that she had really enjoyed the day. The view was simply stunning, and it would be nice to walk like this together sometimes. The man was surprised again that she was talking so easily about a walk. Wasn't she afraid of him? And just recently he was going to lock her in the room, so what had changed now? Selina looked at him carefully, wondering why he was looking at her like that, and Vars realized that it was all because of her eyes. When he looks into those eyes, he always feels like she is forcing him to act. How is it that he, Vars Belius, the cruel Archduke, is unable to resist these eyes? He should not forget his original goal, and the man took the cape from the girl's hands. She just has to give birth to his child, and they can do it today. Vars, the girl said questioningly, and smiled dazzlingly. And her smile lit up everything around, making the man feel warmth spreading inside. First of all, you need to sleep, he squeezed out, blushing, deciding that she was tired today, so she would have to wait until tomorrow. A new winter day had arrived, and birds were chirping outside the window. Selina slowly woke up, feeling warmth throughout her body. Turning her head, she noticed that Anna was throwing wood into the fireplace. Anna also noticed that Her Majesty had woken up and greeted her mistress. Selina suddenly had a Confucian respect and asked Anna not to address her like that, because it made her uncomfortable when someone older than her spoke to her like that. But Anna asked categorically whether the lady intended to treat everyone who addressed her officially in this way. At first, Selina was taken aback by the maid's tone and lost the power of speech. But a moment later she became embarrassed, realizing that Anna was right. Pulling herself together, she said that she was raised as a commoner, and her manners were not at such a high level. She still did not know how to react in some situations, and she would be glad if Anna could help her with this. Anna understood everything, and as the lady said, she doesn't know a lot of things, but the girl's tone and diction are not bad. It can be assumed that the newly minted Archduchess will be able to learn everything quickly. But first she needs to have breakfast. After breakfast, having enjoyed the food and the warmth, Selina lay down on the bed, wondering what she should do now. A sudden thought made the girl jump up in bed. Come to think of it, no one told her not to leave the room. In the original, Selina was locked in the dungeon, and she still isn't. She needs to go outside to get some fresh air and enjoy the sun. People get depressed just hanging around in a room, and the girl resolutely threw on her coat. But she didn't have time to go out, colliding with Anna on the threshold. The head maid asked very sternly where the mistress was heading. Surprised by the unexpectedness, Selina tried to explain in fear that she wanted to go outside, that she felt trapped, and that she was close to depression. At the same time, Selina wondered if Anna was really guarding the door. But then she noticed a cart with food behind her and realized that it was lunch. The maid asked if the lady would like to have lunch, but the girl wondered if it would be difficult to carry all this outside. Anna was surprised that the Duchess was going for a walk, because she had gone out for food, so why should the lady go out? But she added out loud that there was one table near the corridor, and if the lady had lunch there, she might feel the atmosphere of a picnic, which made Selina very happy. And she wanted to go there as soon as possible. Anna added that she would prepare everything. After a while, everything was ready and the food was placed on the table. Selina sat at the table, looking at the dinner that was served with delight. But she was bothered by the need for so much cutlery for an outdoor picnic. She timidly picked up the fork, hoping that if she made a mistake, Anna would point it out. The maid was thinking that she had not yet decided what and how to teach Her Highness. And then she remembered how the gentleman had said earlier that the girl he would bring would not need to be taught anything, since she would live locked up only as an incubator for the heir. But judging by yesterday and today, everything is completely different. Earlier, while cleaning the bed after the master's wedding night, Anna noticed blood on the sheet and immediately realized that it was animal blood. She is the only one who knows the difference between human and animal blood besides the master, and this blood was probably meant to be shown to the maids in the outer palace. In order to prevent rumors from spreading about the wedding night not being spent, the gentleman performed such a magnanimous act. Could this man, the famous cruel Archduke, have committed such a noble act? Has he suddenly gone crazy, Anna thought. It is clear, however, that the Archduchess had a significant influence on his behavior. Perhaps Her Majesty will be a ray of hope for the North. This can stop the Lord's rampage. Selina called out to the maid, which immediately drew her attention. Selina confidently stated that she was going for a walk today and asked if there was anything she should know. Anna understood the lady's words as meaning that she was going to leave the palace, and clearly did not mean just a walk. But she could not let her go alone, so she said that she would go with the lady. At this time, Vars Bellius was working in his office. Rather, he tried to work, realizing that his thoughts were occupied with something completely different. He needs to be told that he's going to lock her up, of course. Vars was going to just lock her up for no reason. But this is a bit too much. And if it seemed to her that he considered her a thing, the man would be horrified. But that was his goal, and he knows he's being a hypocrite. But he needs a reason to do it. He doesn't want to treat her as cruelly as he planned. Not understanding what was happening to him, Vars got up from the table and nervously walked to the window. Trying to distract himself somehow, he looked carefully out the window onto the street. And what he saw surprised him very much. Selena and Anna were talking right outside the windows, and the man became interested in what they were doing there. A moment later, they headed straight for the palace exit. Could she really be going outside, the man thought anxiously. And his anxiety grew. Why was she really trying to escape? That won't happen while she's with Anna. But what will happen if there are too many people there? Finally alarmed, Vars quickly ran out of the room with the thought that he urgently needed to catch up with these two. Selena looked with delight at the village she and Anna had come to. She realized that this world was quite respectable, and although she didn't understand ancient things very well, there were so many people in the market, and they even bought something. She felt as if she was on a journey and was in such an unusual place for the first time. But the reality here is not like what she read. Unlike the original, Vars was quite friendly. And yesterday, too, when he offered her his helping hand. The memories of yesterday made the girl blush again and plunge into delight. She, of course, does not know for sure, because she has never had a relationship, but that moment was similar to the relationship of couples. But on the other hand, it was Archduke Vars Bellius, famous for his cruelty. And this thought brought the girl down to earth. Yes, she can only dream. She can go out for a walk without being locked up, but his character will not change. And yet she wants to get along with Vars. He is her ideal type. Remembering that she was not alone on the walk, Selena exclaimed in surprise. She asked why Anna was standing and offered to sit down next to her. Observing propriety, the maid agreed and thanked her mistress. But she was in no hurry to sit down, looking suspiciously over her shoulder. There, around the corner of the nearest house, stood a man who had been watching them for a long time. A little earlier, Vars was running quickly up the stairs, hoping that Anna and Selena had not yet left the gate. He rushed past the assistant, thinking only that she was indeed trying to escape from him. And I felt a burning desire to catch her right now and throw her into the bedroom. Vars ran out into the street at the moment when Selena and Anna were just leaving the gate. At this time, the girl was admiring the good sunny weather and looked very happy. So the man slowed down nearby, trying to catch his breath after a long run, and besides, he realized something. Selena is an ordinary person who does not have developed intuition. She cannot hide from the supervision of Anna, who was awarded the title of Knight of the Empire. So why the hell is he so worried, Vars asked himself mentally. Well, from this distance he would be able to reach her if something happened, the Archduke thought, while gesturing for Anna to continue on her way. The night maid's gaze indicated that she had accepted her master's task. The entire time that Selena was walking around the village with her escort, Vars followed her, arousing the suspicions of the locals. He thought that if the girl tried to escape, he would catch her and tie her up. He needed a good reason to lock her up, and here it was. If only something else had turned up, the Archduke thought, watching as the girls sat down by the fountain. And they sat there for a long time, and nothing disturbed the awkward silence between them. The man, who continued to simply watch Selena, was surprised that she didn't get tired of just sitting in one place. And why did she go out if she wasn't going to do anything? Did she really just want to scout out the situation? Vars wondered if maybe he should just leave here. Today, for no apparent reason, he dumped all the work on Jart, and he even regrets it a little. Thinking like this, Vars Bellius moved after the girls, thus no longer hiding behind the house. The locals immediately saw him and recognized their master, greeting him. However, although they behaved respectfully, their hands trembled slightly from fear. Vars looked down on them and then turned away. He knew what they were thinking. Their master is a murderer, worse than the devil himself. Even if they feel safe, they get scared when they see him in front of them. In any case, it is important for him now not to lose sight of Selena. The girl smiled happily, pleased with their little walk. A barely noticeable smile also appeared on the Archduke's face. Yes, now only that was important to him and nothing else. Oh, how fresh. I took a walk and took a bath. All that's left is to have dinner." The girl wiped her damp hair, humming cheerfully. And when there was a knock on the door, she, without hesitation, allowed them to enter. And only then did she think that she needed to wear a dress. But the door had already opened and Vars stepped into the room, seeing before him an almost naked girl, wrapped only in a towel. The girl screamed loudly in surprise, trying to cover herself with a second towel, and the man froze in place, impressed by the sight he saw. But the next moment, he realized he had to take a step back and slam the door. Nervously leaning his head against the door, he thought that she had already washed herself, had dinner, and was now resting, since he had managed to do all of this himself and even prepared a gift for her. Repenting at the door, he thought that she didn't like him anyway, and now she also hated him. What a shame. Anna, who had brought dinner to the lady, was watching this whole scene with the door and asked the gentleman in surprise what had happened. Selina at this time fell to the floor, exhausted. She was almost going crazy naturally. She thought it was Anna. What will happen to her now? Because Vars might not like her behavior, even though he knows that she scares people, and then he will easily throw her in prison. Crawling on the floor in frustration, the girl begged the universe to give her another chance. A hem came from behind her, and she realized with fright that she was not alone in the room again. Someone's caring hands threw a warm cape over the girl's shoulders. "You'll freeze." Vars decided to take care of his upset wife. The girl looked at him with wide, clear eyes. She was pleased by his concern. Embarrassed and looking down, Selina thanked the Archduke for his kindness. "Kindness? I'm the kind one." Vars almost choked with indignation, but he still decided that there was nothing wrong with it. And, pulling himself together, he ceremoniously replied that there was nothing to thank for, and he added that he would be outside so she could call him as soon as she changed. Since he wants to have dinner together. At these words, Selina almost choked from shock. This is the first time they will have dinner together. I don't think this happened in the original. Or is he waiting for her to make a mistake? The girl absent-mindedly cut meat on her plate. Looking at her, Vars was overcome with bad thoughts, and darkness literally emanated from the man. Selina raised her beautiful eyes and looked questioningly at the Archduke. Her gentle smile made the man's heart try to jump out of his chest, and a pleasant warmth spread throughout his body. But dark thoughts did not leave him, and Vars, in a fit of anger, squeezed the fork in his hand with force. What's wrong with this girl? No one dared to do this. How could she touch his body so casually? How could she withstand his gaze? As if he was the only one who felt strange, Vars put the gift on the table with such thoughts. Selina asked in surprise what it was and if she could open it. "This is a gift, open it," the man answered calmly. But when the girl opened the box, she was literally blinded by what was inside. And inside was a rich, sparkling set of jewelry, consisting of a necklace and massive earrings with precious red stones. Like any girl, Selina's eyes sparkled at such beauty, and she couldn't believe that the truth could accept it. It may not mean much to him, but it was the first gift she had ever received from a man. Selina doesn't know how it is with the others, but Vars tries to be nice to her. It's definitely a lot different from the original. Maybe they can get along. The girl was happy to see a glimmer of hope. However, Vars' thoughts were the exact opposite. He was glad that she didn't suspect anything. Everything had already been taken care of. Trusted people told jewelers and pawn shops the serial number of the jewelry. If someone came and wanted to sell it, they would just have to give a check for 1,000 gold. And then, coming to the palace with this jewelry, they would be rewarded. Selina will be caught trying to sell the gift, and that's the end of it. Once she tries to escape, everything else is easy. All you have to do is treat her like an object, which is what was originally planned. Just get caught, and from that day on, you will cry every day. Such were the thoughts of Vars Belius, who had planned everything carefully. And so their joint meal passed on one side. Happy Selina, who had received her first gift from her husband, and on the other, Vars, in anticipation of her future suffering. The next day, Selina went for a walk with Anna again, not noticing the eyes watching her. The Archduke kept a close eye on his wife, in anticipation of the events that were to unfold. So far, everything is going according to his cunningly planned plan. And his money, although small by the standards of the ruler of the North, was not spent in vain, he warned Anna, so all that remains is to wait. Unable to sit still, the man grabbed his coat and headed for the exit. At the age of 9, disguised as an orphan, he penetrated the enemy camp, and 2 years later he returned with the head of his enemy in his hands, and his body had turned into a lifeless thing. Having regained her health, Vars went to war again at the age of 13. Since then, no one has ever seen Archduke Belius look unbecoming. Such thoughts overwhelmed Mr. Jart's assistant, who watched his master's hasty departure. And yet he was glad that spring had finally come inside the gentleman. Jart was worried about him with all his heart. On a bright, sunny day, Selina and Anna visited the village market. The girl was happy and calmly chose the goods she was going to buy. What the hell is she doing? Vars, who was watching them, began to get irritated. All she bought were 2 apples, chicken kebabs, and a disgusting-looking leather wallet. This won't help her escape at all, the man was angry. And although he was wearing a black cloak that hid his identity, the black aura around him gave him away, and those around him guessed that he was an archduke. Vars was angry while waiting for the girl to show her true face, and was unhappy that he could not hear their conversations. At this moment, Selina stopped thoughtfully at one of the counters. Perhaps she would make a mistake now. But the girl only thought about the purchase for a short time. But again, no, she just bought a small basket, which in Vars's opinion was of no use. Watching the girls leave, the man was indignant that he needed to buy something simple and roomy. They were useless. Maybe she's going to make a mistake now that she stopped at the shoe store. That's right, you need shoes that you can run in well, that are durable and have a low heel. Selina stopped for a second but soon passed by the store. Vars could barely contain the rage that was bursting out. How could one be like this? What the hell does she want to buy? And if so, why did she leave as soon as she smelled the money? Why was all that worried Vars at that moment, while Selina and Anna were getting ready to enjoy the shashlik? The girl at that moment looked completely contented and happy, and just smiled sweetly. But Vars didn't understand how she could smile so radiantly. He never took his eyes off her for a moment, noticing everything she did. But he has no idea what she's laughing about now. A completely unsuspecting Selina chatted sweetly with Anna while enjoying the impromptu picnic. So what made her laugh? Vars Belius had absolutely no idea. "The chicken kebabs are so delicious!" the girl enthused. She still had a lot of money left and the weather was so nice. In response to her thoughts, a strong cold wind immediately blew. And Selina shook from the cold, feeling as if pieces of ice were running across her skin. And it reminded her of what happened yesterday, when Vars threw a blanket over her. Then she felt real human warmth. When she took his hand, it was so strong that it supported his entire weight. And when the girl thinks about this, she continues to smile to herself. In this world, Vars Belias's loneliness was destined to be. But she was also very lonely when she was Yumi. No one cared about her. There must be a reason why the two of them met and became spouses. Why does she think that everything will be fine for them? No, she wants everything to be fine. Soon everyone returned to the palace. As he headed to his wife's room with the gift, Vars thought that he would feel uneasy if she was again in negligee like yesterday, so he decided not to rush into the room. It's not that he wouldn't like it if it happened again. In the hallway, the man looked thoughtfully at the box in his hands. At that moment, the door to Selina's room quietly opened and, looking around, the girl left the room. She quietly closed the door behind her, trying to make sure no one heard her. Was this really an escape? Vars had an unpleasant thought, but he was somewhat prepared for it. Hiding behind the turns and objects in the corridor, the man quietly followed the girl. Selina, who had been walking forward calmly and even somehow joyfully, stopped for a moment. The girl timidly touched her hair falling over her eyes, as if she was preening herself before an important meeting. And while Selina was gathering strength to do what she had planned, Vars jealously watched her behavior, who she was showing off in front of, and whose room this was anyway. The next moment, the man realized that this was his room and Selina was heading to meet him. Sensing some panic, Vars rushed about in different directions, not understanding what to do. Then a door at the opposite end of the corridor caught my eye. It was Selina's own bedroom. For a while, he considered whether he should go to that particular room. But he still decided that no, he couldn't go in there without permission, and he headed towards the balcony, which had an exit from the corridor. Without thinking, he opened the window and jumped from the balcony. Grabbing a branch of a tree growing near the house, the man easily jumped onto the neighboring balcony and entered his own room. Having caught his breath and placed the box he had been holding in his hands on the table, he exhaled with relief. Adjusting his clothes and bringing his breathing back to normal, Vars carefully approached the door of his room. He opened it wide as if he was going to go out, quite frightening Selina with his unexpected action. Without any shortness of breath, and as if it should be so, he invited the girl to pass. "Okay," was all Selina could answer, surprised. She sat in front of the brightly burning fireplace, feeling a great sense of awkwardness. Vars stood against the wall, far enough away from her, and said nothing. Realizing that she had to do something, the girl patted the bench next to her invitingly, inviting her husband to sit down. He, of course, was a little embarrassed and froze, wondering what to do. But he still sat down on the bench, although not next to the girl, but on the opposite side from her. Then he simply moved closer to her, causing the girl to think that he looked like a teddy bear. In fact, her opinion of him changed. He was so sweet. She took some apples out of the basket she'd brought with her and suggested that they eat them together, as she had bought them that day, and they looked very tasty. She gave one apple to Vars and held hers in both hands. Without wasting any time, the girl bit into a red, juicy apple, surprising her husband with her behavior. Watching her, the man was once again convinced that she looked like a little rabbit, and following her example, he also tasted the apple. The girl laughed merrily. She found his behavior funny. But the Archduke himself did not understand what was funny about what she saw. Maybe he ate apples strangely. "Forgive me if my laughter offended you, that's not what I meant." And the girl showed him her apple. The apple she held in her hands had only a tiny bite left, while Vars's apple was almost half-eaten. Selina was simply amazed that one could bite off so much in one go, and how different it was from her bite. Confused, Vars thought that everything about her was small: her bite, her height, her face, and her hands too. And something else. At these thoughts, the man blushed, realizing that they were too frank. Unable to bear the embarrassment any longer, he suddenly straightened up to his full height, surprising the girl. "I have prepared a gift," he said stiffly, and headed off to the side. In the box prepared by Vars were neat new shoes, and Selina was delighted with their appearance, wanting to try them on right away. But after a few moments, the girl remembered that she was wearing a thick, heavy skirt, which was quite difficult to put on. Understanding what the problem was, Vars knelt down in front of her and offered to help. Carefully lifting her skirts and taking the girl's leg in his hands, he began changing her shoes. She really did have such a small foot. Vars was embarrassed. Selina also felt embarrassed because the man's hand was much larger than her leg. Soon the deed was done, and the girl had new shoes on her feet. Then Vars raised his gaze to her. "Thank you. I like it very much," Selina replied contentedly. She lifted her leg, examining it from all sides, and asked Vars if she was coming too. The girl was absolutely sincere in her emotions, but the man did not understand what was wrong with her. For some reason, it seemed to him that he was going crazy, although she was just laughing. "Come to your senses." He tried to reason with himself, but was unable to contain the embarrassment that was rising. Now that she had comfortable shoes, she would definitely escape, Vars was sure. But to run away from the cold north without any connections— does she really hate him so much that she is ready to die? She smiles so warmly but is about to run away. Selina decided to return to the previous activity and suggested finishing the apples. Vars was unable to refuse her and immediately agreed. He sat down next to the girl again, a little away from her. Then Selina herself moved closer to him, which really surprised Vars, and even scared him of what she wanted to do with him. And why does she smile so often when she looks at him? For some reason, this question hung in the air, making the man sit like a statue. Was she really going to spend the night here, Vars realized? And that made him get a little angry and clench his fists. "Go back to your room," he said in a colorless voice. Finding himself alone in the room, the man mentally cursed himself. What the hell he was doing? He was going to deal with her as he had originally planned if she escaped. But if she really runs away, it seems he won't be able to control his anger. While changing, he noticed that she had forgotten her thing on the bench. Taking the small, neat cloak in his hands, Vars himself did not know what he wanted to do with it. At this time, Selina returned to her room and, in a state of confusion, slammed the door behind her. What was wrong with this monster duke? She asked herself. Selina was definitely right. Vars is exactly as described in the book. But why? Why the hell 3 nights have passed and the original story still hasn't started? Yes, at first she liked it, because he seemed to be paying attention to her and hadn't locked her in a dungeon yet. But after a day or two, she became more and more anxious. If nothing happens, then something is wrong, she concluded logically. In the book, Selina's personality was not properly revealed. It seemed that she was an empty shell. It dawned on the girl. Maybe Selina in the original was as beautiful as the main character of a romantic comedy, and not as timid as her. So much so that she needed to be kept locked up. Really such a charmer. Everything was lost. It seemed that there was no more hope for a better future. She won't be able to become that Selina, and her life will be over. But wasn't the atmosphere today just right for a kiss? The girl was very serious about this. She felt the romance in the air, but his words about her returning to her room ruined everything. She really wants to please him, so why can't it work? Did he really not feel anything for her? Was she the only one who wanted to hug, kiss, and hold hands? She doesn't understand anything because she's never had a boyfriend. The upset girl suddenly looked at her feet, shod in new shoes. She is happy with the gift, but in Korea it is believed that if you give your loved one shoes, he will run away. Does such a gift mean the same thing here? It seems that she is not suitable for him, and he, thus, tells her to leave herself. The new day that came was the same as all the previous ones, cold and frosty. Jart burst into the master's room with urgent news a young man had shown up last night, and he noticed that Archduke Vars Belius was already sitting in his chair in a gloomy mood. After catching his breath, the assistant reported that the young man was from the village of Kimmelin in the southwest, and he claims that he came here in search of his missing fiancée named Selina. They were unable to get married officially, but they promised each other to get married. Jart thought with regret that a thaw had finally come in the gentleman's life, but such an incident changes everything. "The ground has already melted," the Archduke suddenly asked. A very terrifying picture appeared before Jart's eyes. He knew it. The master wanted to bury this young man, and he replied that yes, a month had already passed since the beginning of spring, and the earth was giving way to the shovel. As expected, Vars thought, if she was beautiful in his eyes, then she was beautiful in others' eyes too. He was a terrible person who could not notice this. Having finished thinking, he asked where the young man was now, and received the answer that he was in the basement. The Archduke expressed a desire to look at the man who had come here blinded by love in order to understand what he was like. "Have you heard? They say that Mrs. Selina got married." The boy told the news to his friend. A boy a little older than him asked in surprise what he had said. He was interested in where exactly Mrs. Selina got married, and the young man answered that somewhere far, far away in the north. A person like her shouldn't live in a village like this, after all. She is a noble person. Mrs. Selina wore expensive clothes and jewelry, of course. Elegantly drinking tea suits her much better than communicating with commoners. But when did she become like this, and is she happy now? The young man himself was not rich and not so smart, but he had feelings for Selina, and he persistently asked his friend to tell him everything in more detail. And although no one knew where she was exactly, but once you see her face, you will never forget it. And he wants to see her again. He will be able to find her. He will definitely achieve what he wants, no matter what it costs him. "Come with us," the guard said to him, clearly not tolerating any objections. He opened his eyes with difficulty, seeing several pairs of legs in front of him and a grate behind them. Consciousness slowly returned to him. He found himself tied up and lying on a cold, drafty floor. Having come to his senses, the young man jumped to his feet and shouted what they were doing, who they were, and what they wanted from him. On the other side of the bars, two pairs of attentive eyes were looking at him. "Get started," ordered one of the men standing in front of him. A moment later, the guards surrounded him and grabbed him, forcing him to his knees. He tried to break free, but his mouth was forced open and some liquid was poured into it. Not understanding what was happening, the young man was forced to swallow what was given to him, and then the guards loosened their grip a little. "The village of Kimmelin in the southwest of the country. You and a girl from there named Selina. There was something between you?" asked the chief. The young man felt his consciousness slipping away, as if clouded by some poison. Selina. Beautiful Selina, like a bright sunny vision, the girl appeared before him. He wants to live only for her. He swears that he will work all his life for the sake of their children. "Selina and I loved each other forever," he said in a hoarse voice. "We promised each other to stay together forever," he said, as if against his will, not noticing how the man in front of him was darkening. Jart followed the Archduke in silence. He thought it would be just a spring breeze, but it turned out to be a whole storm. A belladone is a poison that makes one lose their mind and speak only the truth. The one who takes it will speak the truth if he is not strong enough mentally to resist the poison. There aren't even any enemy prisoners to appease the master's bloodlust. The only way to keep him from going berserk is to keep a close eye on him. "You can do it, come on, the young man encouraged himself. "Jart, let him go," the Archduke suddenly ordered, and his smile was frightening. The Archduke ordered the route to be made such that it came through a terrace next to the inner corridor. It was there that a table was prepared for Selina to have a small snack. The girl watched the flying butterflies with delight. They also felt the spring warmth and came out into the wild. "The butterflies seem to want to fly over the wall," the girl noted delightedly. And Anna confirmed her observation, since there are no flowers here and the butterflies are intensively trying to get beyond the walls of the palace. Agreeing with Anna, Selena thought that they were somewhat similar to her. From birth to adulthood, regardless of her wishes, she was always thrown into a new environment and had to survive. She mentally supported the butterflies, let them not give up, they can do it, and she too will still be happy. She will definitely be happy. Selena turned around and saw Vars nearby. The man also noticed her gaze and was slightly taken aback by the way she looked at him. Perhaps it seemed to him that he pulled himself together and headed towards her. She really is an amazing girl, just look at her and time starts to fly by. Vars is sure that others feel the same when they see her. If she hadn't been sold by a man who wasn't even her father, she would have been able to spend time with her loved ones. If she had been raised in an aristocratic family, she could have gotten married and had children at that age. What kind of face would she have on as she whispered words of love to that man, that bastard, who could have been her husband? The man became indescribably furious, as if the fire of war was blazing around him. But why is he like this, and wants to destroy everything that catches his eye? Maybe he should kill him right in front of her eyes, and what method should he choose for this? At that moment, Selena was very happy to see Vars, because she thought about him constantly, and she smiled radiantly. But the man was enraged by the thought that if she yearned for that man even a little, then he would crush his bones and throw them to be eaten by wild animals. "Does it suit me?" the girl asked, slightly lifting the hem of her dress and revealing her shoes. Just a second ago, Vars Belias's eyes were clouded with jealous rage. But when he saw the shoes on her feet, the fire in his soul seemed to be extinguished. "The shoes you bought for me," the girl added, blushing. The man realized that although he didn't understand fashion, even he thought that the dress and leather shoes didn't go together very well. But he still asked if she was comfortable, to which she replied that it had become much easier to walk, and that they were also beautiful. Feeling a little malicious glee again, he thought that simply walking easily was not enough to escape from here as fast as he could. "By the way, will you come with me today?" Selena asked, looking quite combative. Vars was literally taken aback by the unexpected question. He didn't understand what she was talking about or where she was suggesting he go. Selena, a little embarrassed, added that she just wanted to go somewhere with him. Any place would do. "The main thing is that they will go together." She beamed with happiness. The bright rays of happiness that Selena emitted seemed to ricochet off the gloomy figure of Vars Belias, who did not understand anything at all. "As of today, the inner palace is closed," Vars replied. His words unpleasantly surprised and even frightened the girl a little. "For me?" she asked with a drooping voice, to which the man confirmed that she would remain inside. But without losing hope, Selena folded her hands in a pleading gesture and looked at her husband with wide eyes. Unable to bear it, Vars added that since there was a lot to do now, it needed to be closed. It would last about a week. And after that, he suggested going horseback riding together. The girl again thought that she would be locked up, but after his words she relaxed a little and was even happy with his promise. The Duke in turn thought that perhaps today Selena would be mortally offended by him, but that's okay, because he's not going to share it with anyone else. And it will be better if she is empty, sad and depressed because of him. Even if she has a small heart, he will not allow her to give it to someone else, especially for someone who is still alive. If she sees him die before her eyes, then everything will be over. Trying to change his thoughts, Vars thought that he needed to get some air. Before that, he thought she liked the stars, so maybe she should go to the Levelenberg forest. Lavella's night sky is known for how bright and beautiful it is. He's sure she'll love it. At that moment, some noise was heard from the palace, and the young people paid attention to it. A rather shabby-looking young man emerged from the far doors and stood there hesitantly. Selena thought that this man was digging the earth. He looked so unkempt, but only Vars, Jart, Anna, and she can enter the courtyard, so he was probably a servant. Deciding that it was none of her business, the girl turned to her husband and said that she did not know how to ride a horse. When the Archduke asked again if she really couldn't, Selena was a little embarrassed. Was it really that strange? Perhaps all the women here can ride horses, otherwise why would he ask? But she had never even sat on a horse. "Selena!" Suddenly a shrill scream was heard next to her, which scared the girl. The young man, whom she took for a servant, fell to his knees before her and shouted that he had come all this way to meet her. So why would she not even look at him? The frightened girl suddenly recoiled, and the thought flashed through her head that this was not a servant. Thoughts in his head began to work intensively. Maybe he appears in the book, but he doesn't remember reading about it. Maybe he's from the second part. The frightened, confused girl hid behind the Archduke's back, and the young man was horrified by her actions. Now she is a married woman, and she won't even approach him, won't hug him, but does she really not even want to say anything? He started to get angry. How could you change your attitude so quickly? What a disgusting reaction. Selena, he shouted again, turning to the girl, demanding her attention. But the frightened Selena, hiding behind Vars, whispered to him who this young man was. The Duke replied that he had heard that he was her lover, and they promised each other to always be together in her hometown. What did we promise? Selena exclaimed in surprise. A barely noticeable sly smile touched the Duke's lips. When she suddenly came behind him, he thought that she would hit him for this man, but he didn't care. It turns out she hid behind him because she was afraid of this guy. It seems she chose him. And to Vars's great joy, she feels nothing for this young man. Take him, he signaled to the guard standing nearby. The young man was immediately seized and taken away from the masters. Watching this whole situation, the girl tiredly sank to the floor, realizing that something was wrong. If Vars knew about her past, organized their meeting with that person, then he wanted to see her reaction. Also, the closure of the inner palace, did he really show it to this man? If this is true, the girl's eyes filled with bitter tears. With her head down, sitting on her knees in front of her husband, Selena burst into tears. Vars Belius certainly didn't expect this from her. Squatting down next to her, he asked what had suddenly happened. What does all this mean? The girl proudly raised her head and looked at him with eyes full of tears. For the first time in his life, Vars Belius encountered women's tears, the cause of which was him. "You wanted to give me to this man?" the girl asked accusingly. The Duke replied that he had never even thought of such a thing. But the girl did not believe him, calling him a liar. In fact, it was a lie. He was going to kill him right in front of her. But out loud, Vars answered that, in fact, the young man wanted to see her face. And since he and Selena had something in the past, he decided to allow it. Having said this, the Duke looked at his wife and was shocked by what he saw. Selena, although she was sitting on her knees in front of him and her eyes were clouded with tears, but her whole appearance was very proud and combative. "You're going to do this to everyone who wants to look at me, maybe paint a huge portrait and hang it on the gate," she said in a breaking voice. The Archduke tried to say that this young man was her lover in the past, but Selena interrupted. Did he really just believe it and call him here to meet her, a man she doesn't even know? In fact, what Vars said next, he didn't intend to tell her, but there was no way out. "They gave him poison to drink," he said, looking into the girl's eyes. "There is a liquid that, after drinking, makes a person unable to lie. Therefore, he is inclined to trust the words of that young man." "There's so much here," Selena thought devastatedly. "After all, this is a fantasy world." If this man is the real Selena's soulmate, then it doesn't make any difference to him if she meets her ex. The girl, upset, clutched the hem of her dress in her hands, feeling more and more tears welling up. Was she really that indifferent to him? And Vars didn't understand why she didn't stop crying if it continued like this. It would affect her health. He felt sorry for her, and somehow uneasy. When it was all over, the Archduke downed glass after glass of wine, trying to drown out the unpleasant feelings. Having drunk another glass, he put it down on the table with force, causing it to jingle pitifully. Jart, who was next to the gentleman, noticed that he had drunk a lot. However, the gentleman did not stop, and the assistant worriedly thought that he was the stupidest of fools, who did not even understand that he secretly liked Her Highness. For several days now, he has not paid attention to the frantic noise coming from the mistress's room. What man in this world would allow the girl he likes to meet her ex-lover? Sometimes he sits without making a sound. Sometimes he can't find a place for himself. Why does he think only in negative and cruel terms? This is some kind of perverted possessiveness. "Sir, they say that Her Highness is not eating well," said Jart, leaning towards the Duke. And at first, Vars was scared, but pulling himself together, he calmly asked, "So what?" The knight offered to bring the lady some soup, thinking that he would take care of everything. "What am I, your servant?" The Archduke was indignant. But in the end, he accepted the servant's offer and now stood with a tray in his hands in front of the door to Selena's rooms. They said that she hasn't eaten anything for several days. What kind of force can make a person cry for days on end? If she cries like that after meeting her ex, it's obvious who she's thinking about while sobbing, and Vars himself thought unflatteringly of himself. It would have been better if those curses had been directed at him and not that guy. Instead of crying, thinking about him, he would like her to cry because she is disappointed in him. Knocking gently, the man entered the room with a tray and offered the girl something to eat. Noticing that someone had entered, Selena hid under the blanket like a wild animal, ready to pounce on the intruder at any moment. Her look did not express anything good, and in a hoarse voice she asked why he had come. The Archduke said that she was not going anywhere, but the girl retorted that what business did he have with her? Moreover, the inner palace was closed anyway. Knowing that she was right, Vars was nevertheless upset by her answer. Although she was not afraid and there were no difficulties, he was afraid. Now he doesn't feel that way anymore and can just say what he wants. At that moment, the girl turned her face towards him, offended, which literally touched the man because she looked so cute and disheveled. The girl was still angry with him and mentally resented why he had come at all. Why was it necessary to give jewelry and then give shoes? Why was it necessary to help her when she fell? It really makes no sense. She doesn't understand anything because she's never dated a guy. And if things continue like this, she never will. Her anger was literally bursting and hovering in the air. Having cleared his throat, the Duke decided to tell her some news that she would like. "The doors are open again. You must keep your promise to ride horses with me," he said. The girl instantly calmed down and asked when he wanted to go. Her mood changed so quickly that both she and the Duke simply looked at each other in silence for a moment. Right now, the man finally answered, breaking the silence first, and his answer left the girl stunned. However, it didn't take long to persuade her, and within an hour Selena was ready for the planned horseback ride. She arrived at the stable first, which made her a little angry. How could this even happen? She cried so much, why didn't he ever ask if everything was okay? She didn't expect it, but is it really that hard to wipe away at least one tear? Noticing Vars in front of her, she became angry again because he did absolutely nothing. Vars, who was examining the horses, noticed Selena approaching him. In his eyes, she was beautiful. And even though it was obvious that she was angry, she still looked cute. In fact, Vars didn't even suspect that she was angry. He only thought that these clothes suited her too. Feeling joy, Vars prepared for the trip while Selena was still angry, and Jart, who was passing by between them, did not understand what was happening. However, this whole situation was very tiring for the assistant knight. Camlin is a small town, so there are no roads suitable for horse riding. Selena said she can't ride a horse, so that's not suitable either. And how she had fun in her village, probably everyone there went hunting with a bow or rode horses. All that was required of her was to give birth to a child, and so he did not look into her past. She came here, although he knew nothing about her. He thought that everything would be fine. And if they had known about her past, Jart would never have brought someone like her. Well, thank God they didn't know anything, thought Vars, leading the horse by the bridle. While leading the horses, the man turned to Selena and invited her to mount the white horse. But the girl noticed that the white horse already had a large load on its back, and if she sat down, it would be very difficult for her. These words made Vars laugh very much, and he laughed heartily. Then he told the girl not to worry. This horse could be ridden by 5 like her. She weighed less than a bun, and in Vars' eyes she looked like a little scared rabbit. What a shame, thought the girl. There are many more horses than she thought. And now Selena doubted whether she would be able to ride it, because if she fell off the horse, she could die. She felt uneasy saying that in case he got angry, but Selena decided that he definitely couldn't. "I can't go." She lowered her head and gently touched Vars's clothes. The man didn't understand. He thought she was joking. But fear increasingly overcame the girl, and she assured him that she was telling the truth and could not ride a horse. Then Vars suggested learning horse riding and going on a horse ride next time. Or she can ride with him on the same horse today. Hearing these words, the girl's thoughts began to race on the same horse means sitting next to him, but she might misunderstand. If he turns on the green light like that, why is everything like this at such important moments? Could this really be the sign, but isn't it too much? Pulling herself together, Selena added that if everything was ready, then they should do it exactly like this, surprising everyone with her determination. Soon, they both came to Archduke Belius's horse. Selena put her foot in the stirrup to climb onto the tall horse. And the next moment, Vars, with one easy movement, lifted the girl and seated her in the saddle. He also ordered her to hold the reins tightly and put both feet in the stirrups, which the girl readily did. Vars himself jumped into the saddle behind her, pressing himself slightly against her back. "Let's go," he added, trying not to press too close. But he still had to stretch his arms forward to take the reins, thereby surrounding the girl from all sides. For some reason, Selena wasn't worried, but on the contrary, she began to calm down. Wars is the strongest protagonist in this world, and she ends up being the main heroine. She was furious, but now she doesn't care anymore. The man, however, did not feel as calm as she did. In fact, they were in big trouble because he couldn't think about the fact that she was sitting right in front of him, so close that he can smell her and touch her hair. The scent coming from the girl was so sweet, and Vars wondered how she could be so cute from behind, how the back could be so cute at all. But what worries him most is that both he and Selena are now wearing riding pants, with only 2 thin pieces of fabric between them. Their bodies were so close to each other at the hips that it made the man blush, and he had a hard time holding back. The heavy bags flew into the carriage with a crash. Anna asked Jart if they were preparing the carriage for the trip and received an affirmative answer. The gentleman asked his assistant to prepare and drive the carriage to Levelleberg. She thought about it and asked again when, to which she received an answer in the evening. "You really are planning to leave in the evening. You are completely out of your mind." She looked reproachfully at Jart. The young man recoiled in surprise, as if he had done everything right. The maid only sighed wearily, surprised by the knight's lack of forethought. "Leave at midnight and arrive around dawn," she said categorically. And despite Jart's indignation, she added that it would be better for everyone. That's why he still hasn't married, Anna finally realized. Jart remained standing with his mouth open, not understanding what to do. The gentleman ordered to arrive by evening, but Anna insisted that the carriage should be there only by dawn, and what should he do? After some thought, he decided that Anna was quite capable of taking his head if he disobeyed her. And mentally asking his master for forgiveness, the knight decided to do as the maid said. It really should be better. A bright, warm fire was burning in the cool evening forest. Selena was cold, and Vars suggested that she move closer, and he himself moved closer to the girl. He added that he had ordered them to be picked up in the evening, but apparently some problems had arisen, and at the same time he threw his cloak over the girl's shoulders. Selena noticed that everything was fine. In fact, it was so calm and cozy here. The man didn't show it, but he was pleased with the whole situation and the fact that the girl was sitting with him, and he mentally thanked his assistant for being late. And now Selena will tell what happened to her today. She doesn't know how to ride a horse, so she rode in Vars's arms. They arrived at a beautiful wooden house in the forest, and Vars, like a true gentleman, helped the lady get off her horse. As soon as her feet touched the ground and the man's hands were released, the girl became as embarrassed as Vars. And to cover up their awkward silence, Selena began to admire the stunning wooden house, and at the same moment, Vars asked how about a barbecue for dinner. And now, sitting by the fire, they moved closer to each other to warm up. Vars said that he ordered them to be picked up in the evening, but apparently some problems arose. The girl assured that everything was fine and that she felt so calm and comfortable here. Although Vars didn't say anything in response, he mentally thanked Jart for this opportunity to be near his wife. "If you want to drink, alcohol should raise your body temperature," he suggested to the girl, and Selena happily agreed, hoping that everything would be fine. In Korea, she was quite the drunkard, and could easily drink 3 bottles of soju at once. Taking out a bottle of wine, Vars asked if she had ever drunk it before. Selena replied that she doesn't really like wine. For some reason, it has an astringent taste. Hearing this answer, the Archduke suggested that if he didn't like wine, then how about whiskey? This was exactly what Selena was waiting for, and she immediately agreed. Holding a glass in her hands, into which the man was pouring an alcoholic drink, the girl was delighted that she was trying whiskey for the first time. As soon as the glass was filled, she immediately tipped it back into herself. So Selena drank wine with pleasure in her homeland, Vars thought, watching the girl. At their first meeting, she said that she liked the wine from the Lafon region the most. It had a low alcohol content, so she enjoyed drinking it. Selena's glass was empty, so Vars offered to pour her some more, to which she agreed, noting that it was very tasty. While making small talk around the fire, the Archduke noticed that many small animals lived here. "Squirrels or hedgehogs?" Selena asked naively, and the man replied that there were hares and foxes here. "I needed to prepare the bows. Do you like hunting?" he asked. But he didn't ask just like that. He was eagerly awaiting her answer. Noticing his persistent gaze, Selena took it in her own way and blushed slightly. Having already drunk her 3rd glass of whiskey, the girl had the thought that now was the very moment for a kiss. The man's serious look and such an intimate atmosphere, this has never happened before. She really wouldn't want to kiss for the first time when she was drunk, but there was nothing she could do. Hunting, the girl jumped up abruptly, remembering what they had talked about. But the alcohol had done its job, and as she tried to answer that she had never been hunting, Selena staggered. She began to fall straight into Vars's arms, feeling dizzy and the ground slipping out from under her feet. The arms she fell into were so big and cozy that the girl immediately relaxed in his embrace. Lifting the limp girl into his arms, Vars thought that she probably didn't tolerate alcohol very well, and he finds no other justification for her behavior. Before the wedding, at the very beginning, and a week after it, his wife's behavior varied greatly. He didn't understand who, how, or why, but Selena had definitely changed. As if she had become a witch, this thought was firmly rooted in his head. He felt possessed around her several times, and now carrying the drunken girl in his arms to the bed, Vars only became even more convinced of this. If this girl is a witch, then where is the real Selena? Will he be able to find her? The man sat down on the bed, still holding the already snoring girl in his arms. It's cold," she said sleepily, and pressed herself closer to his broad chest. Although it was pleasant, the unexpected movement made Vars blush. He didn't understand where this feeling came from. She was wearing a vest and also his coat. She couldn't be cold. Angry at his unexpected reaction, he was indignant that she was a real witch. Vars didn't understand what this girl was doing to him, although in fact, she was doing nothing. It was already deep night outside, but she was calm, unlike Vars, who was outraged by the witch's treachery. The rest of the night passed quietly, and finally the first rays of the sun touched the earth. The Archduke continued to sit on the bed, holding the girl wrapped in his cloak in his arms, having completely stopped feeling his body. All night he thought about what he should do if she really was a witch. A beautiful, invincible witch can swallow up an entire empire. What will happen to a mere mortal like him then? Better than that woman, he decided, pushing aside the unpleasant memories. And yet he needs to find the real Selena. Hearing some sounds outside the window, Vars realized that Jart had finally arrived. The girl lifted her head from the pillow, trying to open her eyes after a deep sleep. I sat up in bed and realized that I was completely alone in the room. I overslept. Where did Vars go? He left me here, the girl thought in panic. Leaving the room, she headed deeper into the house and heard someone's quiet conversation. Find out about the witches or shamans who were in the north before and after my wedding. Vars gave orders to his assistant Jart. The Archduke thinks that the girl was switched on the wedding day, and they must find the real Selena. These words filled the girl with indescribable horror, and although Jart assured the master that such a thing could not happen, that there was absolutely no invasion into the inner palace, Selena herself, eavesdropping around the corner, began to get irritated. Apparently only her soul changed, but not her body. If we find a witch or shaman who was in the north at that time, then it will not be difficult to find the real Selena, the Archduke continued to reflect. At that moment, Jart noticed the Archduchess standing around the corner and greeted her according to all the rules. Pretending that she had just arrived, Selena came out to meet them. Vars introduced the young man as Viscount Jart Hain Ogus, adding that they would see each other often, and Jart himself replied that he was pleased to meet them. "Nice to meet you, I hope we get along," Selena replied politely. And although she didn't say anything unusual, the young people looked at each other warily. In fact, Jart had already met Selena in her home village. Jart was the one who brought her. They had talked several times in the palace too, but now she was acting as if she was seeing him for the first time. And smiling, Selena could not understand why men looked at her so strangely. When everything was ready, they all set off on the return journey together in the carriage. Sitting opposite the men, the girl thought that it seemed like it was all over for her. Remembering her reaction when she met Jart back in the room, the girl realized that the real Selena already knew him. And now a strange atmosphere of mistrust and misunderstanding has settled between them. How serious are the charges she could face for pretending to be a duchess, and is the death penalty possible? Frankly speaking, there is nothing strange in taking a suddenly changed woman for a spy who is plotting some grandiose conspiracy. And she will be tortured cruelly to make her tell the truth. And maybe even cut off your head. He must have suspected her even back then when he brought in someone he called her ex-lover. And now all that remains for him is to carry out the punishment for the misdeeds committed. Is it really so difficult to just lead a quiet family life and share different moments of everyday life? The girl cried mentally. No. Even if you find yourself in a tiger's den, you can come out alive and unharmed, she decided. So we need to think about how she should behave. But for now, we should be prepared for the fact that she can handle everything. And although they rode in complete silence, Vars observed the behavior of the girl sitting opposite. He thought that all witches were brave. But it seemed that this was not so. Selena was either inspired or literally drowning in despair. In any case, she's funny, Vars smiled at his thoughts. The carriage rolled slowly along the forest road, accompanied by a black raven. With its red eyes flashing, the bird soared upward and set off on a long journey. Having reached the village, she dived into one of the attic windows. There, a young, long-haired man was already waiting for him, landing on his outstretched hand. The raven croaked something, and the young man thanked him for the information. But this man was not alone in the room, and another person asked how he was doing. So, the long-haired man answered, still holding the raven in his hand. The bandaged figure, hidden by a deep cloak, replied that he hoped that she would play her part well. The long-haired man was surprised. Was there really nothing he could do now? And the bandaged man got angry, shouting that he understood everything. Rohan, a heavy hand fell on his shoulder, calming the raging man. This may be upsetting, but be patient. Vincent and I will take care of it. The third man entered the room. And the weather is still cold, he added, throwing a blanket over the bandaged man's shoulders. Turning away from them, the long-haired man released his assistant into freedom. Vars thought that he should first pretend that he didn't know anything. It will be worse if she understands everything and runs away. There is no information about this new soul. So if she just slips away and returns to her old body, it will be impossible to find her. It seems that I will have to abandon the idea of spurring her to escape and then locking her in the dungeon. Vars doesn't understand what her purpose is, but until he finds a way to hold on to the soul, he must forget about escaping. The only way to get what he wants is through polite cooperation. Whatever she was planning now, the real Selena was also a wonderful woman. But there was one big but that could ruin his life. Before Vars's eyes, moments emerged when the girl looked at him with wide-open eyes without a hint of fear, how she smiled next to him. What if it is not this soul that is watching him, but she? We need to think of something, the Archduke decided confidently. What are the options? The young people sat opposite each other, each thinking about their own problem. Suddenly it dawned on Selena that there seemed to be one option for her. Maybe convince Vars that his wife hasn't changed at all and he doesn't need to look for the real Selena. And would everything be okay in that case? The girl sincerely hoped so. In both novels and dramas, there is always a magical way that everyone uses. And this method is called memory loss. The girl was very inspired by the idea that came to her. She had to act like a real actress. Then he would believe her. Selena doesn't know when he started to suspect something, but she needs to be careful and say that she doesn't remember anything from their first night. The girl sat in complete confidence that everything would go according to her plan, just as Vars was confident in his. Distracted from her thoughts, she looked out the window and realized that she had not seen the surrounding area at all before. "Is it just me, or are we going on a different road?" she asked Vars, to which he replied that the horses were different, and the carriage needed a different road, but it wouldn't be much longer. Without hiding his suspicion, the young man looked at the girl, waiting for what she would say next. "You're not hungry," she said with hope in her eyes. Vars remained silent, either not knowing what to answer or not wanting to answer her question. Trying to somehow justify herself, the girl added that they hadn't even had breakfast, so she wondered if they were hungry. "The city is even further away, so we'll have to wait," Vars said, holding out his hands to Jart. The knight at this time handed the basket to the master, and Vars handed this basket to Celine, saying that she could eat it. Taking the basket of food, the girl smiled timidly, noticing that she was worried not about herself, but about him. The man did not expect this from the girl whom he considered a witch, and therefore was very surprised. Embarrassed, he replied that he was fine and that she shouldn't worry. After some time, the carriage passed through a fairly large town. Looking out the window, Selena admired the flickering views. She literally radiated happiness. She noticed that this was not like the square they had walked through. It was as if fairies lived here. From the girl's reaction, Vars thought that it was probably the first time she saw a city where people lived. Maybe she's a witch who lived alone somewhere in the mountains. Anything is possible. Although the girl tried to pay attention to everything around her, carefully not looking at Vars, she felt his gaze. Why is he staring at her like she's a fake? Which makes her feel very awkward. "My bottom already hurts from such a long carriage ride, but horses' bottoms don't hurt from running for such a long time," she blurted out without thinking, in order to diffuse the situation. Immediately after she said these words, the girl mentally got angry at herself. What was she even talking about? Why make the already awkward atmosphere even worse? At that moment, the carriage suddenly braked and stopped. "We have arrived where you said we would," Jart said to the gentleman. Selina was the happiest of all about this stop and waited for the doors to open. Vars immediately got out of the carriage without looking at the girl. Where is he going? Is he really going to get out here and go about his business and send her alone to the palace? The girl became worried, but at that very moment the man extended his hand to her. "Come out," he said, intending to help the lady down to the ground. Selina looked in surprise at the large male palm that was waiting only for her. The young man blushed slightly as he offered her his hand and waited patiently for her to give him hers. The girl didn't think long and put hers into his large palm, accepting his help. Taking a couple of steps, she carefully descended to the ground, leaning on her husband. Vars noted that if they went any further, she would get too hungry, so they would stop at a restaurant here. And turning around, he headed to the side, lowering his hand, which surprised the girl. But she was not going to give up, and full of determination, she did what she wanted. She reached out her hand, intending to grasp his palm. But since her hand was small compared to his large palm, she grabbed only 2 of his fingers. Vars, of course, felt a touch on his hand and was very surprised. And the girl pretended that nothing supernatural had happened. She held his hand, thinking that this was like a date, and they looked like real lovers. The restaurant they came to was very richly decorated, and there were portraits of high-ranking persons hanging on the walls. The table was laden with all kinds of food and drinks, served on rich plates. The soup, the bread, and the main dish were all delicious. The girl devoured the food with pleasure. But the look of the man sitting opposite her was too heavy. They were together all night, and he bought such delicious food, the girl thought sadly. Her mood began to deteriorate a little, since not everything was going according to her plan. She thought that this way they became at least a little closer. And she hates that she has to deceive him, but she has to try to survive. She needs to take care of her future self, and she needs to do it right now. Deciding to act like she was Selina who had lost her memory, that was her plan. The girl said she had a question. "Who are we to each other?" she asked Vars directly, which surprised him greatly. The question was so strange that the man did not understand why she asked it. The girl cleared her throat, ready to play out the scene she had prepared for him. With a naive look, she said that he came to her bedroom at night and gave her gifts. And above all, she thought about the location of the bedroom, because she felt that they were a married couple. "Is this so?" she finally asked. Still not understanding what she was getting at, Vars took the cup with trembling hands and tried to drink tea from it, and Selina continued to play it off. Adopting a completely innocent look, she added that she did not understand what kind of relationship they had. Vars failed to maintain a calm expression against his will. Tea poured out of his mouth, and while the man was spitting, the girl continued to look at him with an innocent gaze. "I think you need to explain this in more detail," Vars added, starting to get irritated. "I'm sorry if I surprised you," the girl said, frightened. "Anyway, I seem to have lost my memory," she added confidently, looking straight into his eyes. And although such words surprised the Archduke, he tried not to give himself away in any way. If her witch nature was revealed, she would not be able to achieve her goal. He thought that she would start making excuses. But in any case, he was going to play along with her in this little performance. And he said what she wanted to hear first of all. They are a married couple. "From what moment do you remember yourself?" he asked, slightly surprising the girl. Starting to get nervous, the girl clenched her hands into fists and tried to answer his question as realistically as possible. She doesn't know the exact date, but it was night, and he closed the curtains and told her to go to bed. An awkward pause hung over them, but the man continued to drink tea, while the girl waited for further developments. She then added that the next day he went out for a short time and immediately returned and poured blood on the bed. "It turns out that you don't remember anything up until this moment, am I right?" asked Archduke Belius. And he added that on the day she was describing, they had a wedding, which made her exclaim in surprise, covering her mouth with her hand. And the man asked her what she was probably wondering, why nothing happened between them. And he immediately replied that their marriage was one of convenience, waiting with interest to see how she would play out such a story. This came as a surprise to Selina. She hadn't thought of this. To make things more difficult for her, Vars added that they had decided to begin their marriage 10 days after the ceremony, and of course she didn't remember, but tomorrow was the 10th day. "This is a failure," the girl said, feeling like everything inside her had collapsed. "What do you call it? She dug her own hole," she decided as they drove on after the restaurant. Selina is really going crazy. She knows what the Archduke monster is saying, but it's a blatant lie. If all this was true, what should she do then? She didn't understand anything at all. Selina thought she had barely survived the most difficult moment, and then another twist. Vars Belias continued to watch the girl's mental suffering. Why doesn't she have a clue about this? If she is in the body of a married woman, she really is careless about everything. Was this really such a shock for her, he thought warily, seeing her state. Is it really possible to show this so openly? The man began to get angry. How can she talk about marital duties but not even understand what it is? Like an innocent flower, she asked what had happened between them. What an impudent and cunning witch. The young man decided to lick every inch of her body so that she could feel everything on her skin. The next evening, everything went according to plan. Selena was getting ready for dinner. She had a great plan for winning the man. Let's get drunk and stretch our legs. That was her plan. Yes, this is the worst option, but she can't think of anything else, so she has no choice. This is just a way to drag out time until she comes up with something better. But where can she get alcohol here? She doesn't know where the kitchen or liquor store is. With nothing to do, Selena decided to go to the market, just buy some alcohol and come back right away. She wasn't running away and was going to come back, so she was safe, the girl reassured herself. Passing by the window in the hallway, she noticed the view outside. The day will come when he and Vars will get along, and then everything will be fine. For some time, the Archduke remained in his room, quietly rejoicing that everything was going according to his plan. Finally, he got what he wanted so much. The man held a red box in his hands. He barely managed to get it on the black market, a magical talisman that connects soul and body. This is an item that was originally used for medicinal purposes. It contains a soul and can heal wounds on the body. But because of the side effects, now only psychopaths have them. This little box contains something that had deadly side effects. It means that perhaps she will die faster than he, the owner of the talisman. But Vars will make sure she doesn't die first, so everything will be fine. He resolutely headed towards the girl's room, surprised that not a sound came from there. Maybe she was sleeping and didn't notice that he had arrived, the man decided when no one answered his knock. Vars knocked again, but the room was just as quiet. At that moment, Anna approached with a cart full of food and was surprised to see the gentleman near the lady's door. The maid immediately felt that something out of the ordinary had happened. Cordon off the area immediately, the Archduke ordered, and his appearance was terrible. Pulling a hood over her head to hide her face, the girl carefully made her way through the crowd, but still ran into someone on the street. She asked for forgiveness, but someone grabbed her hand, preventing her from falling. She apologized to the man again and looked at his face, also hidden by the hood. Long purple hair showed from under the hood, the cloak hid the tall male figure, and the gaze of shining eyes burned right through her. Sorry, I was mistaken. The next moment, the young man in the hood smiled and raised his hands in a conciliatory manner. He turned and walked away, leaving Selena in confusion. Looking after him, the girl thought that this man was somehow strange. The Archduke's personal guard searched the streets of the village in an orderly formation. Seeing them, people tried to hide and close all the windows and doors of their houses. Along with them was also Archduke Belias himself. "Search everywhere," he ordered in a thunderous voice. "They will search until dawn. And in the morning, if necessary, they will start the process again." Selena ran away because she didn't want to be with him so much. "If you don't like it, then you could have just waited or said something. I waited 10 days. I couldn't wait any longer." He decided that if he caught her, they would never let her go. Suddenly, in the distance, he saw a girl walking peacefully, who was not even hiding or trying to run away. And although he wasn't sure if it was her, at that moment, a strand of light hair appeared from under the hood. It was she. It dawned on Vars and his heart sank. He ran as fast as he could to catch up with the fugitive, asking for only one thing, that it would be she, the one he is looking for. Reaching her, he grabbed the girl by the hand and looked into her eyes. Vars hoped that the soul was still in this body. Selena was slightly startled by the surprise, and the hood flew off her head. By inertia, she pulled her hand back, asking Vars, who had grabbed it, what had happened. "I also noticed that his complexion doesn't seem healthy." The girl was really bothered by his appearance, and she reached out her hand to check on him. Seeing the palm reaching out to him, Vars unconsciously leaned towards her so that her palm rested on his cheek. "When I catch her, I'll lock her in the room. That's what I planned," the man thought, completely oblivious to what was happening around him. Although Selena was worried about him, such tenderness in the middle of a crowded village made her feel embarrassed. "We're going our separate ways. We're going our separate ways." Jart was one of the first to notice this awkward scene and hurried to get rid of prying eyes. He hoped that the Duchess would be able to hug the gentleman tightly and suppress his murderous nature. Everything turned out just like that, but there was something that was bothering him, namely, that she turned out to be not just a simple girl, but a cunning witch. "What are you doing here?" After a moment, Vars came to his senses and remembered what was going on here. Selena was scared, not knowing how to explain that she had left the palace, but she still decided that there was no point in telling a lie, and even though it was awkward, she had to tell him everything as it was. "I thought I'd definitely need some alcohol tonight, so I went to buy some," she blurted out. Alcohol? Vars was shocked beyond measure by this turn of events. It was only because of alcohol that she had raked his guts out, and because of that alcohol he hadn't slept all night that time. A little disappointed, Vars noticed that she didn't seem to have had enough alcohol from the night before. This was news to the girl. Was she drunk? But the man added that it was not that bad and she should not worry. The girl sincerely asked for forgiveness for her behavior, but the Archduke noted that this was not worth doing. Selena used to drink often, and she didn't have drinking habits. It seems her new body doesn't know how to drink at all, and now she is very ashamed. To make matters worse, she had used the alcohol to try to postpone their night together. But now her plan had failed. Vars looked closely at the embarrassed girl, deciding that now was the moment to do what he wanted to do. Kneeling before her, he surprised Selena greatly with his actions. "Give me your leg." He patted his knee so she could place her foot on it. The girl was outraged that he needed her leg. Is he really telling me to put my foot on his knee like this, in the middle of the street? Confused and not understanding what was happening, Selena was in no hurry to fulfill his request. But the man still stood in front of her on one knee, patting the other, and she had no choice, so she decided to do it by simply closing her eyes. Taking off her shoe, she carefully lifted her leg, intending to place it on the man's lap. But before she could do this, Vars grabbed her thin ankle with his powerful hand. For the next few seconds, he did something to her leg, making the girl more and more confused. And soon he took his hands away, and on her leg sparkled a bracelet with a small butterfly pendant. Now Vars can breathe a sigh of relief because if she runs away, he will always find her. Even if she cries and begs, he will never let her go. Vars noticed that her foot was much smaller than his palm, and the girl noticed that it was an ankle bracelet. Was that really a gift? And thanked him, saying that she would wear it with pleasure. Selena was beaming with happiness because the bracelet was so beautiful, and the sound it made when it moved was cute. "Shoes last time, ankle bracelet, does he have a foot fetish?" Selena was taken aback. The Archduke finally rose from his knee and looked at the girl. "Let's go home," the man said conciliatorily, and Selena happily agreed, smiling dazzlingly. But she was still haunted by the fact that she behaved badly when she was drunk. Vars noticed that he had never seen such drunken habits before, and he remembered with warmth how she pressed herself against him. So from now on, she should never drink alcohol when he is not around. "And when you're nearby, is it possible?" the girl asked slyly, looking at him from the side, which left Vars stunned for a while. But then he just grinned, realizing that she was joking. And he replied that if he was nearby, then of course it was possible and everything would be fine. "Then let's have a drink today." The girl rejoiced and became inspired. The Archduke looked at Selena silently, unable to object to her. Long story short, nothing happened yesterday. Selena sat sadly in her room the next day. Yesterday, as soon as they returned home, Vars immediately threw her into the bedroom. And Anna watched the door all night to make sure she didn't go anywhere. And then this morning came, making her worry even more. It's funny that she says that after she's done everything she can to avoid spending the night with him, but why isn't he touching her? She was outraged that he dared to just leave her like that. Looking in the mirror, the girl felt that she had absolutely no charm, but her face was so beautiful. A little sickly, as if lacking life, such a face is not suitable for a strong leader. More for an active and sweet person, for a charming, easygoing girl. Selena nervously drummed her finger on the table, lost in her thoughts. Maybe she should try something completely new. Who knows? Maybe if he finds her really nice, there will be changes in their relationship, and they would finally be able to kiss. The girl was very determined to achieve this. The window on the second floor of the palace swung open, letting fresh air into the room. Vars went out onto the balcony and took a deep breath. He was finally finished with all the documents. This Jart was stuck here until lunch, demanding that he check the report, then conduct the morning training, and even said that he needed to work even more in the evening. Somehow he had become bolder lately. The Archduke was angry. But most of all, the man was interested in what Selena was doing now. The girl's room was just above his office, and besides, it was approaching lunchtime. If he's lucky, he might hear her laugh. Not so bad, the man thought with a smile on his lips. After some time, Selena was indeed having dinner in her room, and Anna was interested in whether the lady was satisfied with the food. And then she added that she had brought a man who wanted to meet her, and this man was now standing right behind Anna. Taking a step to the side, the girl introduced herself as Mädel Ogus, from the Ogus family, which had served the Archduke for many years. It was a great honor for her to meet the Duchess, the girl added with a smile. Anna went on to say that this lady had excellent manners and a strong will, and she had brought her here because she thought she would make a good maid. Mädel herself added that at first she was appointed as the mistress's maid, but a few months ago she suddenly became seriously ill and almost died. Selina could barely keep up with the girl's train of thought, who was chattering non-stop that, fortunately, she had met a wonderful healer, was able to survive all of this, but did not have time to return to the palace in time. But she really wanted to meet the lady, so she asked if she could take the place of her personal maid right now. "I'm so glad I was able to meet you," Methel finally finished with great enthusiasm. And although in general Selina was not against the maid, there was still something that made her wary. The sweet girl she had been thinking about recently while looking at herself in the mirror looked suspiciously like Methel. Anna did not intervene in the conversation and only silently watched the girls. She noted that the lady's expression was not very kind, but it was good that she agreed without saying anything. Selina has never asked for anything since she came to this palace. She never expressed dissatisfaction with simple food and unfashionable clothes. I never demanded that anything be replaced in this dilapidated palace. Only once did she ask to go outside for a while. Of all the money given to her, she spent only a few coins on small things. Looking at her, you can tell that she has no ulterior motives. It's hard in real life to be as naive and pure as this girl seems. Perhaps the Empress will visit here tomorrow. It seems that the gentleman thought that he had quietly married, simply by informing the Emperor in writing about it. The Empress, who is twisting the Emperor around her finger, cannot help but know about this. In the life of the Empress, there was no need to hide her emotions. She is the most respected woman in this country. However, if an illegitimate woman becomes a noble lady and also the wife of her only brother, the consequences are unpredictable. Anna had a strange, oppressive feeling she could not predict what would happen next. Of course, she loves and values the Empress more than anything in the world. But this does not mean that she is considerate of others and only says nice things. She is not one of those who mock and kick someone out if she does not like them. And yet Anna hopes that whatever this innocent girl hears, it will not hurt her. Anna was actually worried, as was Selina herself, but the girls had different reasons for worrying. Methel gracefully poured tea into the cup, showing off all her skills. "Your Highness, did you like it?" she asked with a dazzling smile. The lady was still impressed by the active and sweet maid, but answered in the affirmative. "It just sparkles. She would look great with Vars," Selina thought gloomily. Vars Belias was on his way to his wife. Without saying a word, he sat down at the table opposite the girl to also drink tea. However, Mädel, upon seeing the master, immediately began to shake slightly, as if she was frightened. Selina noticed how the girl was pouring tea for the Archduke and her hands were shaking slightly. She realized that the maid was nervous, and that was understandable. Anyone would get nervous when such a handsome man appeared in front of her. Selina herself is like that. Well, she felt like an idiot, and that's why her mood suddenly dropped. Even if you practice your charm, the person inside still won't change. She helplessly squeezed the fabric of her skirt. The girl's depressed mood did not escape Vars's attention. He motioned to the maid to leave them. And Methel didn't have to be asked for long. She quickly bowed and instantly disappeared from sight. In an effort to escape quickly, the girl did not stop until she got to her room and slammed the door. She was very, very, very scared. She almost burst into tears there. She was so scared that her hands were shaking, and she was even more nervous because she could make a mistake at any moment and be punished. But the Duchess is truly amazing. Even in front of His Highness, she remained absolutely calm. And she even told Methel that her tea really tasted good, not at all like in reality. The personal maid literally prayed and worshipped the Archduchess. She was like a deity to her. And Methel swore that she would hold on and would never lose to the Duke, and would become the best maid, worthy of the Archduchess. However, in reality, Selina did not feel like such a strong woman. Her mood was worse than ever. Vars watched his wife and noted so many different expressions on her face in such a short period of time. She really is a very interesting and sweet person. The man looked at his wife thoughtfully, clearly thinking about something. "How about having dinner together?" he suggested after a short thought. And Selina immediately agreed, literally beaming with happiness, and her joy was transmitted to Vars, stabbing him right in the heart. If he had suggested going for a walk and drinking champagne, perhaps she would not have refused. And while Vars was experiencing moments of joy because of their upcoming dinner, Selina's mood was still gloomy. "Pull yourself together," the girl told herself mentally. She envied Methil because she wanted Vars to pay attention only to her. They had already entered into marriage and lived together for 2 days and 1 night. She had already done all she could do in their current situation. And now she wants to spend even more time with him. Thinking so, she emotionally jumped up from her seat, surprising the Duke. Selina decided she had to be more persistent and asked to be given a tour of the outer palace. Her mood had clearly improved. She looked like a warrior, which did not escape Vars's notice. But the silence between them seemed to last an eternity. The girl was waiting for an answer to her proposal. "Good," Varsbelius replied, and a barely noticeable, satisfied smile crossed his lips. The girl immediately rose from her seat, intending to fulfill her promise. The Archduke extended his bent arm to the girl for her to grasp. "Let's go." The man leaned slightly towards her, taking a couple of steps towards her. At first, Selina looked at the offered hand in surprise, but this did not last long. Soon the girl extended her hand and they set off on an impromptu excursion. It was a bright sunny day and the nature around seemed to be blooming. Selina walked, holding tightly to Vars's hand, walking measuredly with him, but the young people felt some awkwardness between themselves. However, the man was thinking about something completely different. It seemed to him that it was too gloomy here, and she might not like it. However, the girl noticed a building standing nearby and asked what was there. The Duke replied that the building was rarely used, only when guests arrived or a reception was being held, and that it was currently rather empty. "Ha ha ha ha, that's how it is." Selina seized the opportunity and pulled the man straight towards that building. Vars immediately realized that she was trying to quietly drag him to that building, but he didn't understand why she was doing this. How can a girl who looks like a rabbit have so much power? But submitting to even such a small force was not so bad, he decided. "You say there is no one there." Selina was very serious. If this is really the case, and the atmosphere is right, and luck smiles on her, her little dream will finally come true. And they will be able to kiss for the first time. But she is getting too ahead of herself. Having decided to calm down a little, the girl thought that she first needed to go to this building. As the young people headed towards the doors, someone was watching them. It was indeed gloomy inside, with a huge staircase, wide corridors, and a complete lack of any lighting. Without letting go of Vars's hand, Selina looked around in surprise. "It's really very quiet here," the girl noted. She took a couple of steps forward, stopped in fear. It seemed to her that she heard something. "I think I hear Nephis's voice," Vars said thoughtfully. Selina, slightly frightened, asked who it was. He explained that it was the ghost of a girl who lives here on the 4th floor. "Why did you just tell me now?" Selina cried out in fear. However, the Duke did not understand what she was talking about, so the girl excitedly repeated that she meant a ghost. Still amazed, the Archduke remarked that this did not particularly bother him, and he did not think that there were people in the world who were afraid of ghosts. As if realizing that they were talking about her, Nephis at that moment looked out from behind a column on the 2nd floor. Naturally, Selina saw her right away and was seriously scared. "Let's get out of here quickly!" She fearfully pulled Vars towards the exit. Moving her legs faster, the girl urged Vars towards the exit, asking him to go faster. If you think about it, in this world there really is magic and dragons, and of course there are ghosts. She had always been most afraid of ghosts, but she had forced herself to think that none of this was true. "This won't work here," the girl thought through her tears. She was offended that Vars was treating her too meanly, ignoring the fears of other people. After all, even if he's not interested in her, even if he doesn't care about her, it's still somehow sad. As they emerged from the gloomy building, the gates at the other end of the courtyard were wide open, awaiting a passing carriage. And to Vars's surprise, 4 horses pulled a richly decorated carriage into the palace grounds. However, he was worried about who was patrolling outside at such a time. Although all his guys were even overly diligent, the carriage stopped right in front of them to Vars's surprise. The doors opened and a tall, beautiful, dark-haired woman in rich clothes came out. "Long time no see, brother," she said, looking at Vars. "That's true," Archduke Bellius replied emotionlessly. The relatives exchanged words of greeting, while Selina looked at the arriving guest in surprise. The beautiful woman noticed that her brother had recently gotten married, but Vars rudely replied that it was none of her business and tried to cover Selina with his body. This movement did not escape the notice of the woman, who was very perceptive. Although she was very beautiful, the look in her red, shiny eyes was slightly alarming. After some time, the woman stood by the burning fireplace, thinking about something. "Why are you here?" Vars burst into the room, to which she replied that she didn't need a reason to come to her father's house. But Varsa was not satisfied with this answer, because even if it was so, coming for absolutely no reason was too much. Having no intention of continuing the argument, the woman added that on the way, she had heard news that Vars was looking for a witch. "That's not true," the Archduke replied, instantly irritated. His sister offered to help him with this, but he refused without a second's hesitation. "It seems you have a good relationship with your wife," the guest insisted. They were a family now, so they needed to get used to each other. But Vars rudely replied that it was none of her business. But the woman was not going to end the conversation, and added that they needed to know each other's faces so as not to accidentally pull out the hair of someone they shouldn't. The Archduke warned her not to even think about any nonsense if she did not want the imperial palace to drown in a sea of fire. The brother and sister were both stubborn and impenetrable. Neither wanted to give in to the other. And yet the guest exhaled tiredly, giving in for a moment. "It seems like you've already forgotten about the battlefield and are living your own life," she noted. And she added that she was quite happy about this. Happy that her brother had finally found his place. Vars walked nervously and quickly down the corridor. "All witches are so arrogant and cunning they can manipulate you so that you submit completely without reserve. Both the imperial palace and the ghosts do whatever they want, and this greatly irritates him." Walking down the corridor, he couldn't calm down, becoming more and more irritated. But if you think about it, are there any witches who are afraid of ghosts? Witches usually use them as their familiars. There must be other clues to finding Selena. Witches are very rarely afraid of ghosts. Typically, when a witch takes over a body, the original owner's soul is destroyed or trapped. Such an innocent-looking witch simply cannot commit such atrocities. The man's head was filled with different thoughts. He didn't know what the right thing to do was, but he still decided to definitely see this matter through to the end so that the original owner of the body could never return to it. The next morning, Selena was stretching in bed, having just woken up. She had slept well and was immediately interested in whether Vars had woken up. They needed to have breakfast together. Looking around, she realized that Vars Belias, her husband, was right there in the room. Frightened, she immediately dived under the blanket, hoping that he had not noticed her. How is that possible? Did he really see everything? She had just woken up and her face was probably so swollen, and she had her mouth open and yawning. She didn't even want to think about how she looked now. But at that moment, the man came up to the bed and sheepishly apologized. He didn't want to scare her. Looking out from under the blanket, the girl asked if something had happened early in the morning. Vars didn't know where to start because something had actually happened. To be honest, a very dangerous witch has arrived in Belias now, and it can be said that she is targeting Selena, but she is just an innocent rabbit who is afraid even of ghosts. If she finds out the whole truth, she will faint. His sister is different from other witches, so she could swallow this girl without even blinking an eye. Vars contacted the Imperial Palace to have her taken away, but in the meantime, we need to be on our guard. What was her intention in staying here until now, he wondered, looking at the girl who had once again hidden under the blanket. Selena threw back the blanket with a battle cry, surprising Vars considerably. Still shaking with fright, she apologized and explained that she was a little surprised by his appearance. The man added that he didn't want to scare her, but she needed to know. Nephis disappeared after they went there yesterday. Maybe she liked Selena. The girl did not understand how the ghost disappeared and how she liked her. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Vars explained that there was a maid who was watching Nephis, but they said she disappeared at dawn. She often preys on girls who are alone and tries to steal their bodies. In fact, his words were a blatant lie. But Selena didn't know this, and so she was genuinely scared. Hiding under the blanket again. "What are you doing?" Vars asked in surprise. "Nothing, so you're saying that it would be better for me not to be alone?" Selena asked, shaking under the blanket. And Vars confirmed this, looking with surprise at the slightly trembling Selena. "Oh, what's there?" he suddenly said, pointing out the window, causing Selena to jump in fright again. "What's going on?" she screamed, clinging to Vars. If only he could. He would like to see something like this every day, the Archduke thought with a grin. "Listen." He gently touched his wife, intending to calm her down. But at that moment, Methel knocked on the door. Then the personal maid entered with a cart, intending to help the lady get ready. Selena, still in the blanket, jumped out of bed, thanking the girl for her help. But Vars didn't like this at all, because just now there was such a pleasant atmosphere. How could such a tactless girl be the maid of the Archduchess? And why did Selina go to meet her so joyfully? He would have immediately replaced her if she hadn't been with Jart's sister. While helping the Lady Metal, of course, noticed the Duke sitting on the bed and was overcome with indescribable horror. A couple of days before, her brother had left her some survival instructions if the master was in a bad mood. Then it was imperative to be close to Her Highness. "This will save your life," Jart said knowingly. Methel promised to remember everything, although it was a little scary. And now she remembered her brother and she became a little sad, which Selina immediately noticed. But the maid couldn't say anything to her mistress and only continued to help her with shaking hands. The clouds over Vars Belias also continued to thicken, and his gaze became like the gaze of a monster. But then Selina remembered that she would like to have breakfast together in the afternoon. "You'll wait, won't you?" she asked with a smile, turning to her husband. Instantly the clouds over the man parted, and like a soft, cozy teddy bear, he responded with consent. Even the atmosphere in the room became brighter, except for Methel, who was hiding behind the lady in fear. Having finished helping Selina, the girl left the room and leaned tiredly against the door. Her brother was right. If she's close to Her Majesty, she will be safe. Keep it up. After changing, Selina, accompanied by Vars, headed towards the exit, walking along the open corridor. She noticed that it had definitely become warmer than when she first got here. "Finally, spring has come," the girl smiled warmly. Varsa was interested in what she saw and why she was laughing. "There's a white butterfly there." The girl pointed her finger towards the street, and she added that it seemed to her that they were similar. Vars was very surprised. "To get honey, the butterfly needs to find a flower, but there are no flowers here. She has no safe haven and no one to take care of her. And when the wind blows, it is hard for her, but she flies forward boldly and bravely." Selina thought about this when she watched her fly in search of flowers. Listening to the girl's reasoning, the Duke only began to grow gloomier. "She speaks as if she's about to leave this place. Does this mean she is just using him and planning to leave him?" "I can do it," he said, placing his hand on the girl's shoulder. "He can give her a safe home and take care of her. He can really do that for her." Vars felt it with all his soul, that he was ready to take care of her all his life. Such frank words that he spoke also impressed Selina. And although the Archduke spoke sincerely, he thought that she should not dare, even in her dreams, to leave him and fly like a butterfly. Flowers, honey, whatever, let her just tell him what she needs and he will get it by any means necessary. Even though Vars said such pleasant words to her, the man looked quite frightening. Selina was surprised to see that he was angry and was scared. Did her words sound like she was complaining about the danger? So he says everything through clenched teeth. She wants to improve their relationship even if it takes a long time. And if she can't, she wants to at least be a good friend. "Maybe we should go out together," the girl asked pleadingly and confidently at the same time. Such openness surprised Vars, who did not expect that the girl would still treat him so warmly. And although he really wanted to, he was embarrassed and not sure that it would be possible. After all, his sister is just waiting for a chance to get to know her better, and perhaps even do something with his wife. His crazy sister would never come here just like that. On the one hand, he would like to lock Selina up and make sure they never meet. But he literally sees everything she's thinking about how she wants to go on a date with him. But for some reason, he doesn't answer. It would be great to go for a walk together. But why is he silent and all that stuff? "Is there a place you want to go?" the man finally asked, holding out his hand to her. "To the market," the girl answered without hesitation, placing her large hand in his. After all, at the market you can look at all sorts of things and eat a variety of snacks. However, Vars was worried that if she heard the rumors about him and learned the whole truth, would she still smile and hold his hand? He hesitantly squeezed her small fingers in his hand. Then he grabbed the entire palm, intending to never let go. Vars added that he wanted to tell her something, namely that the woman who met them yesterday was his sister. These words stunned the girl because in the original there was nothing like this. But why didn't he introduce her yesterday? It turns out she ignored her sister-in-law. This is the worst first impression you could make on your in-laws. At this time, Vars asked her if her memory had returned, and the girl immediately answered that it had not yet. "Then there's no need to rush," the man finished, leading her away with him. Soon they opened the gates, intending to go to the market, but there was a not very pleasant surprise waiting for them. "You've finally come. Their sister Varsa was waiting for them." Selina thought this was her chance to change the first impression of herself and intended to introduce herself. However, Vars stood right in front of her, blocking the girl from his sister. For some time there was a battle of views between them, Neither of the relatives wanted to give in to the other. But this did not stop Selena, and looking out from behind Vars, she nevertheless greeted his sister, introducing herself as the wife of Archduke Vars Belias, Selena Belias. "I just found out that his older sister came here. I'm very glad that we met," the girl chattered and expressed hope that they would get along in the future. Cynthia Belias really liked the openness of this little girl, whom her brother married. Turning to her brother, she repeated that Selena wanted to get along with her, and it seemed that he was the one putting a spoke in the wheel. "I'm glad to meet Selena too," the woman said, and asked how about having dinner together tonight. "It's impossible," Vars said curtly. However, Selena grabbed his hand and apologized to his sister in a softer tone, as they already had something planned. "If everything is okay, then what about tomorrow?" she asked, still intending to get to know her husband's relatives better. Vars really didn't want this, but looking at the girl, he realized that he couldn't refuse her. The guest also noticed that, although the brother did not want this, he could not even open his mouth in front of his wife. So he had met the one he needed, the woman thought, and replied that it was a good idea. The Belias Palace was built to block the path of the monsters descending from the northern permafrost mountains. Over time, the monsters became fewer, and the palace began to be overgrown with people. The Duke allowed them to settle here and provided passive assistance. When word spread that the ruler of the local lands was taking good care of the people who had difficulty making a living began to flock here from all corners of the empire. The opening of the mine made it possible to provide for the life of the rapidly growing population in the north. A large number of deposits of magical ore were formed, which appear when the skeletons of dragons have been lying there for a long time, so there were no particular difficulties. Thus, the mining and manufacturing industry was born, and over time, wealth was accumulated from other sources, such as monster skin, which is worth a lot of money. So 200 years later, a young girl made her debut. At the relatively late age of 27, Cynthia Belias made her debut at the Imperial Palace. The beautiful girl was very popular among young people. A witch from the north who instantly took over the minds of the people in the Imperial Palace. Soon after her arrival there, the territory of Belias became a duchy. When the mandatory limitation on tribute and troops was lifted, the Duchy of Belias became so huge that no one could surpass it. Selena read all this in a book she took from the palace library, and it impressed her greatly. The brother and sister work hard both within and outside the duchy, and together they have raised the status of the country. Although they spoke in a cold tone, there was no sense of hostility between them. Selena thought that this was the real family she never had. Suddenly, someone called out to the girl, and she turned in that direction. Methel was walking towards her and asked if she was out for a walk and where the other maids were, with a young man next to her. The maid happily introduced the young man as the doctor who had helped her when she was on the verge of death, and simply an amazing person. The young man bowed gallantly, noting that he was glad to meet Her Highness. "I hope we get along." His violet eyes looked straight at Selena. There was nothing unusual in his behavior, and Selena ceremoniously continued the conversation, but something made her surprised he seemed familiar to her. She froze, unable to utter a word, and the young man asked if she wanted to say something. Laughing awkwardly, she replied that nothing, and that she had simply made a mistake. "Your Highness, what do you plan to do next?" Metal asked her, while the stranger behind her simply smiled calmly. However, the next moment, when Selena was not looking, the young man's gaze sharpened. Selena told Methel about her plans for the day, and the maid asked with horror if she was going to the market with her master. "Yes," the girl answered, beaming with happiness, very pleased with the upcoming trip. After some time, she walked arm in arm with Vars towards the entrance to the village. The girl now seemed to be glowing from within. Her mood was very good. "Let's buy some goodies and eat them by the fountain," she suggested, turning to her husband. Vars said nothing in response and only nodded his head affirmatively. Grabbing the man by the hand, the girl moved on with a calm soul. Initially, it was beyond her power, but now he follows her wherever she wants. Selena was simply delighted. Soon they came to the market square, where there were many people busy with their own affairs. But as soon as they entered the square, the hum of the village seemed to die down somewhat, and all eyes were turned towards them. Vars knew it would be like this. He had been through a lot in so much time. Such a hostile atmosphere must have confused Selena. The man lamented that he was so out of his mind that he allowed this to happen, but the girl only squeezed his hand tighter, distracting him from his dark thoughts. "What kind of snacks do you like?" She smiled brightly as she asked. "What apples perhaps?" she asked again, but the man did not answer. The Archduke was still irritated by the reaction of the inhabitants to his appearance, but Selina was nearby and did not let him get angry. "I like apples." He just realized that he really liked them. Then the girl pulled him towards the counter, offering to buy some apples first. Her cheerfulness somehow spread to him, and Vars was unable to pay attention to anything but his wife. Although Selina tried her best to remain cheerful, she was still in shock at what was happening around her. "It's not even anger, that's why there's such a gloomy feeling in the air." Everyone here looks at Vars with fear in their eyes. They are afraid of the person who will protect them if they are in trouble. It's so lonely. No wonder the husband is really lonely. That's why she grabbed her husband's hand even tighter, thus showing him her support. After they bought the apples, they sat down by the fountain in the middle of the market square. When the man was about to start eating the apples, Selina snatched them from his hands, asking him to wait. She took out a handkerchief and wiped the apple with it very carefully. This action surprised Vars very much. He did not understand why the apple was being wiped. The diligence with which she did this made him laugh slightly. His smile did not escape the girl's attention, and she was very happy about it. Still, a smile suits the Archduke, and it made her soul feel so light. Returning the peeled apple to him, the girl added that if she did it this way, it would taste better. And since you can only eat a certain number of apples per day, it is better to eat them when they are at their most delicious. Vars looked in surprise at the shiny apple in his hands while the girl peeled her own. He then looked up at the bright sky above, feeling strange feelings inside him. This must be the very feeling of happiness. Soon a crunching sound was heard, and each of the young men began to eat his own apple. However, the girl was not completely calm, and was closely watching the reaction of the man sitting next to her. Is it possible now, she asked herself mentally. Yes, now or never, she was determined. Vars noticed the girl's unusual behavior, so she looked at her questioningly. At that moment, Selina turned to face him and winked playfully. From such an unexpected action, the man literally choked on the apple and began to cough. "You're okay." The girl patted him vigorously on the back while the man bent over. He didn't understand what he had just seen with his own eyes. If he wasn't imagining it, Selina winked at him. If a girl winks, it means she is interested. It's like my subordinates squinting their eyes to attract girls' attention, he suddenly compared. But wasn't this followed by a cruel failure in the attempt at seduction? It happened to me. The Archduke was in a state of shock. He turned sharply towards her, wanting to make sure that his vision had not deceived him, but Selina had already turned away from him, embarrassed by what she had done. And while the man was trying to figure out whether she really did it or whether he had imagined it, the girl tried not to look at him. But his patience ran out, and Vars asked directly what she had just done. Such pressure took Selina by surprise. She didn't know what to say. Thoughts were spinning in her head. She didn't understand what to do. And the first thing that came to her mind was to answer that she had a stomachache. But she immediately thought that if she felt bad, then Vars would most likely worry. And so she immediately quickly started chattering that this was not what she meant. The apple was so delicious that for a second she thought her stomach hurt, and she laughed nervously, blushing like a tomato. She reproached herself for what she did. Was she crazy? Why did she do such a thing? But she can't tell the truth. Judging by his reaction, he's not happy. At this time, the Archduke considered himself a complete idiot, that he could not even understand what was going on, how absurd it was. So they sat there flushed, feeling the awkward pause between them. And yet she was so sweet, he thought, while Selina thought he was so cool. After a walk to the market, Selina Bellius took a bath in her room. As she sank into the water, she thought that Vars was a fool. She didn't have a grimace of pain on her face, so why was it so easy to convince him? And how could he not understand what a wink meant? He probably just wanted to turn away and pretend he didn't notice her wink. But it would be better for him to be just a fool who didn't notice anything. And if Vars pretends not to notice, then her cuteness just sucks. It's all very sad. Sitting in the bathroom, Selina suddenly felt a cold breeze blowing, and she immediately remembered Vars's words about how the ghost often hunts girls who are alone and tries to steal their bodies. She instantly jumped out of the bathroom in fear. Since the inner palace is now restricted, only 5 people can now freely enter and exit from here. Several maids arrive at dawn under Anna's direction to work and then leave. Anna is busy with dinner now. Methel should have finished by now. Jart simply cannot come here, as he is busy with work and has no right to enter the mistress's room. In the evening silence of the palace, a shrill, frightened cry was heard. I'm alone now, Selina thought with horror, instantly wrapping herself in a towel. Without looking where she was going, she rushed out of the room. Vars warned her not to stay alone, but she forgot. The girl ran away, calling herself a fool and an idiot. And now, at the end of the corridor, Vars's room was visible, and she prayed only that he would be in the room. Without a second's hesitation, the girl threw only a light cloak over the towel and burst into the room without knocking. In front of her stood Vars Bellius, who was getting ready for bed and was undressing. Selina was relieved to see him right in front of her, but the man was quite surprised. There were tears in the girl's eyes, and she could barely hold back the sobs that were bursting out. Still, the sight of his wife on the verge of tears made Vars worry about what had happened to her. The fire crackled merrily in the fireplace, devouring the carefully added wood. Vars sat on the floor next to his own bed, while Selina, wrapped in a blanket, sat on the bed and warmed herself by the fireplace. He had literally been forced out of bed, and now he was lost in wondering what had happened. The girl was still scared, so she carefully slid down onto the floor with the blanket and sat down next to the Archduke. Moreover, the tearful girl also pressed herself against him, seeking protection and comfort. Vars, not expecting such a reaction, took a closer look at her. What he saw surprised him. Selina's hair was wet, drops of water covered her barely clothed body, and the light raincoat didn't even cover the bare knees. Noticing all this, Vars Bellius blushed from embarrassment and the realization that her clothes were so thin, and under the cloak nothing was visible that he would like to examine. But these thoughts made him blush even more. But if he asks her what she has under her cape, she will take her for a madman. He can already even hear such an answer. The Archduke exhaled calmly, trying to calm his wildly beating heart. "What were you doing?" he asked the girl in a calm tone. Then Selina, wrapping herself in a cloak, replied that she was just washing herself. "That's how it is," Vars answered, as if nothing supernatural had happened, but emotions were raging in his soul. He wondered why she came to him like that and wanted to ask so many things, like why she was crying. But if he asks something, she will immediately leave, and he doesn't want that. When the girl's emotions had calmed down a little, she leaned tiredly against the man's strong shoulder. Covering her mouth, the girl yawned. The incident in the bathroom made her quite nervous. But this development of events pleased Vars. She cried so much that now she was completely exhausted. He gave her the bed so that she could sleep a little. So why was she nesting nearby? "Isn't it cold?" he asked, turning to the girl. But when she asked in surprise what he had said, the man explained. He added that she was still wearing just a thin cape. The girl looked at him in bewilderment, and then the meaning of his words dawned on her and she was horrified. In fact, she ran out of the room literally naked. She had nothing under her clothes. And she completely forgot about it, but did he really notice? What if he thinks she's a pervert? What a shame! Vars stood up from his seat, and the girl thought that he had finally noticed how she had disgraced herself. But the man simply walked over to the fireplace and added more wood for warmth. And then he returned to the place next to her, which made the girl very happy, since she thought that he had not noticed anything. The man closed his eyes in exhaustion, thinking that she had once again come up with something for herself and was now sitting there smiling. The sight of her tears made his heart clench. But if she continues to smile like that, he will want to make her cry, so that she will cuddle up to him so touchingly. What is he thinking about? Vars was horrified by his own thoughts. Each of those sitting on the floor in front of the fireplace at that time thought only about how the other would not find out his innermost thoughts. The next morning was no less sunny than the previous one, and outside the window, the birds were chirping cheerfully, awakened by the coming spring. Jart politely knocked on the master's door and asked permission to enter. There was no sound from the room, and the knight himself opened the door, eager to talk about business. But he immediately stopped short, noticing long blonde hair on the gentleman's bed. This vision somewhat stunned the Archduke's assistant, and he froze in place. Then he hurried to close the door and recoiled as if he had seen something he shouldn't have seen. Sitting on the floor of the corridor, the knight slowly realized what had just happened. At that moment, the door of the room opened slightly, and Archduke Bellius appeared through a small crack, asking what he wanted. Vars left the room, and Jart continued his report that it looked like the witch was in the north at the time, and it would not be easy because the witches had been notified that if their true identity was revealed, they would be in trouble, but they were keeping an eye on her for now. He took the documents that the assistant brought and began to study them carefully. They stated that several merchants had seen a witch near the south wall about 15 days ago. Her entire body, face, head, and even fingers were carefully bandaged, and after the Archduke's wedding, she disappeared without a trace. Among witches, there are sometimes those who dream of eternal life. Is it possible to find a living body after having abandoned one's rotting one? It's even better that if the body wasn't her goal from the beginning, she won't try to go back. Find her, no matter how difficult it may be, Duke Belius ordered. And he ordered to find her weak spot, be it a dying body or a family member that she was hiding. No matter how cowardly Vars acted, if only he could keep Selena close to him. No matter what her past is, what her goals are, if she wants to leave him, then he needs to know her weakness in order to seize at least such an opportunity. Jart, of course, accepted the order, although he did not understand the logic of his master's reasoning. To tell the truth, it seemed to him that Archduke Belias was mad with his love. If everything is going to be okay, perhaps we should escort Her Highness to the inner palace and surround her with the best soldiers. If he and Anna could hold out until the night of the full moon, it would all work out. Lady Selena looks like a feather that would fly away if you blew on it, and Jart is not sure if he can guarantee her safety. Perhaps it would be worth taking her away from the palace. But this thought was immediately discarded, because the big and scary bear would certainly be looking for his little rabbit. This is of course not an option, then the Duke will become completely furious. And what if Her Highness can pacify him? I would like her to be closer. But this scenario is one of the most dangerous, so all we can do is pray. After listening to his assistant's report, Vars returned to his room and leaned heavily against the door. Thoughts were racing through his head, but they were all about just one person. About a small, fragile girl sleeping peacefully on his bed. No matter how much he looked at her, she was still just as beautiful. It's good that she sleeps so soundly, the man thought, leaning closer to her. The girl's legs moved slightly under the blanket, revealing themselves even more. This made the man close his eyes as he thought she was not wearing any clothes. In general, Vars thought that she was a timid person, but how could she sleep in such a defenseless state? True, the man began to get angry at her naivety while the girl slept peacefully by his bed. If she catches a cold because of the cold, she is so thin. Vars was indignant, throwing several blankets on her one after another. Selena ended up literally buried under a pile of warm blankets, but continued to sleep peacefully. And Vars, with a sense of duty accomplished, decided that he needed to wash up and come to his senses. But as soon as he left the room, Selena instantly opened her eyes. He really went to wash himself, he just left. The girl was surprised. In fact, she was sleeping lightly because of the ghost, and when the door opened, she woke up and just lay motionless. And then Vars drilled her with his terrible gaze. They hadn't even kissed yet, wasn't he getting ahead of himself? In fact, Selena could hardly say this to his face. And it's good that she didn't say it, otherwise she would have disgraced herself until the end of time. Turning over, the girl decided to simply continue pretending to be asleep. But shouldn't she be angry when someone hits on her, and not the other way around? And suddenly she remembered the reason why she came into her husband's room in the first place. She climbed out of bed with the blanket and headed towards the bathroom door. And she sat down next to him, justifying herself by saying that there was a ghost there. If Nephis showed up now, she would instantly start tugging at the door handle. Trying to clear his head, Belias took a shower. But the thoughts did not want to be organized, they jumped from one to another. If a person is as experienced as he is, he will be able to sense someone's presence outside the building. And now, while he was taking a shower, he felt that someone was right outside the bathroom door. He almost saw her silhouette sitting on the floor by the door. Because he knows this, even a cold shower does not calm him down. Being under the stream of water for a long time, he still felt that she was also still behind the door, trying to kill him or something. What kind of torture was this? He remembered how she, like a little rabbit, said she was afraid of a ghost. In fact, at that moment, she looked very cute, with her thin and restless voice. If he opened the door, he would run into Selena, he thought, putting on a robe after a shower. Seeing each other in a robe, they really are like husband and wife. The door opened so suddenly that Selena was scared and happy at the same time. Tears instantly appeared in her eyes. The girl was truly scared. She sat on the floor, huddled under the blanket, shaking, while Vars towered over her like a huge statue. From his height, she looked like a small bean to him. Having changed and gotten ready, the girl sat in the living room drinking tea. She thought with horror that she could no longer live like this. If she is scared during the day, she can go outside. The outer walls are full of people. But at night, she is left alone with her fear and can only shake, hiding in her pillow. All this horror experienced at night made the mood fall lower and lower. Anna noticed that something was bothering the lady and asked her directly about it. Although Selena was ashamed to talk about it, she still said that she was very afraid of ghosts. She also heard about Nephis, who lives in the palace. and that if she is alone, Nephis will come to take possession of her body. That is what worries her. Anna listened carefully to the lady and then told her that Nephis is a spirit that belongs to the owner. She knows etiquette, respects the living, and faithfully serves the family of the Archduke, so the lady has no reason to worry. The ghosts strictly guard their territory. The entire palace, including the inner and outer, is Nephis's territory, so other ghosts cannot appear here without her permission. So there's no need to be afraid, Anna finished, which made Selina extremely irritated. She also remembered Vars's words that he didn't think there were people in the world who were only afraid, and now everything became clear. The ghost here and the vengeful spirit she was thinking about are two different spirits. And Anna added that Nephis is very kind and a little timid. If she knew that the lady was afraid of her, she would not have come close. Selina's imagination immediately conjured up a pale, friendly ghost who greeted her cheerfully. She breathed a sigh of relief, imagining that the ghosts here were just like pets, and realized that now she was not afraid. But at the same time, another thought occurred to her. The way she ran quickly from that empty building and hurried Vars to go with her, and how she burst into his room last night, running away from a ghost. How funny it all must have looked from the outside. The Duke must have died laughing watching her horror. It turns out that you knew everything, but pretended not to understand. It dawned on the girl. Selina was overcome with so many different feelings: resentment, anger, frustration. She felt like a rude fool, and she decided to sort this out soon. But there is no time yet, because she wants to look beautiful during dinner with Vars's sister. Deciding that she would deal with it later, she asked Anna to help her prepare. As the sun was setting, it cast a soft golden light over everything around. Cynthia Bilius was waiting for the guests to arrive in her room. Vars and Selina didn't keep them waiting long, and the girl greeted them in a friendly manner and asked how long they had been waiting. "Not at all," Cynthia replied, rising from her chair. Selina noticed with delight that the woman's smile was exactly the same as Vars's. Making small talk, she said she was so glad she could see the sky and the stars, and the breeze was so cool. Vars decided not to get involved in this small talk, but Selina decided otherwise. She elbowed her husband in the side with all her might to get him to join in the conversation. The man looked questioningly at his wife. She looked very unfriendly, because the girl still had not forgiven him for the joke about the ghost. Now she understood that he would not cause any harm. They all went to the dining room to have dinner, and Selina told them that she had seen a butterfly the other day, so she thought that everything would bloom soon. "Is it really so cold in the north even in summer?" she asked, smiling. Cynthia didn't really join in the conversation, but she was surprised by the behavior of her brother's wife. Usually the noble ladies she met told her different things when they first met. She didn't always keep up the conversation because she wasn't interested in it. But most ladies are afraid of dying and therefore hardly open their mouths. Sometimes those who stayed long and were friendly turned out to be flatterers. This girl doesn't give that impression. Is she stupid, naive, or so pure, the woman wondered. And this fool, her brother, follows her around like a faithful dog. Smiling at her thoughts, the woman decided to keep the conversation going. "Yes, I'm also waiting for summer," she replied, extending her hand to the girl. Selina was surprised by this answer from Vars's sister, but Vars himself was more surprised by his sister's reaction. The girl took Cynthia by the arm and they continued on their way. Ignoring her brother, the woman, arm in arm with her new relative, went to the dining room, and Vars could only look after them in surprise and bewilderment. The evening passed smoothly. Everyone enjoyed their own food. However, Vars noticed with surprise that his wife, for some reason, did not even look him in the eye today, and wondered what he had done. It was probably because of his sister. They had only recently met for the first time, so Selina was being careful, he decided, while putting the cut pieces of meat on her plate. "How are things in the capital?" Selina kept up the small talk. "Everything is the same as here," the guest answered her daughter-in-law's question. "Still, I think the capital has a lot of beautiful buildings and unique places," Selina added, beaming like the sun. At this point, Cynthia asked Selina what it was like in her homeland, to which she replied that in the southwest there were a lot of flowers and it was very humid. But she immediately stopped herself, realizing that she had just said too much. Selina wondered if everyone had noticed what she had said, as if her hometown really was in the southwest. She still clearly remembers all 29 years of her life in Yumi's body. But her homeland is not the southwest of the empire, it is South Korea. She thought with horror that her mood had been spoiled by such a small oversight. Vars thought with a chuckle that this poor witch had forgotten about her amnesia. Or maybe she found out about her hometown in advance, well and good. But that wasn't what worried him, and what worried him most was his own sister. She knows so much about his wife. She probably already guessed that Selena is a witch. If so, it could be dangerous for his little bunny. All magical powers on Earth do not decrease or increase. In order for a witch to increase her power, she needs to absorb it from someone. And this means multiple victims among other witches. As Vars knows, Cynthia has already absorbed more than 10, and he can't even imagine how strong she is. If the sister thinks that this power is not enough, then she can target the little rabbit witch. And then Selena will have no chance against the Empress. Vars clenched his fists tightly. Get up. He instantly grabbed his wife's hand, insisting on his own. Vars thought that it was time to end this family feast for today. Without saying another word, he quickly led his wife away from the table. The young people walked down the stairs, none of them wanting to talk to each other. However, Vars noticed how the girl's mood changed. And to somehow diffuse the situation, he asked if Selena had grown up. You think I'm not grown up enough yet? The girl was taken aback. But when Vars answered negatively, she only snorted and turned away from him. In fact, the man couldn't think of a polite way to say that she looked like a grown woman. And so all he could do was watch the offended girl leave and sprinkle ashes on his head. Selena was really angry. Of course she was smaller compared to him, but that was because he was big and not because she was small. Moreover, today she was wearing revealing clothes and heels. During dinner, all Vars did was peel her shrimps and didn't eat them himself. She doesn't even know if she can forgive him. Does she really look like a child to him? After dinner, the Empress calmly finished her tea in her chambers. At that moment, Jart entered the room and bowed ceremoniously to the lady. He was interested in how things were going with the Empress. Cynthia noted that there was still some work to be done, and Jart added that nothing had changed, and asked if she would be with Her Highness during the full moon. This question surprised the girl. She sincerely did not understand why she would do this. But the knight was quite shocked by her answer. He thought with horror that she was already close to refusing, and in a panic, he looked for ways to achieve consent. Even if he tried, it wouldn't work, so he dropped to his knees and begged her to answer what he could do to make her happy. The Empress looked questioningly at the kneeling knight. Well, you have nothing to give me. I have everything I want, she replied. But there was something he could do, and Jart immediately braced himself. She was very interested in why Vars was looking for the witch. It was as if Jart had been struck by electricity. She knows everything. The knight was frightened, and he would have to choose his words carefully so as not to harm Her Highness in any way. So he replied that an evil spirit had recently been spotted at the castle, which looked suspicious. Its entire body was in bandages. During the investigation of its activity, they found out that at the foot of the snowy mountain a long time ago, many items had been sold, which were probably used by witches. The Empress listened emotionlessly as the knight explained that they had assumed that it was an evil spirit, a witch, and that was why they were now tracking her down. Looking at the woman's reaction, the knight understood that she knew all this, and even though he changed the story a little, there was no need to show that he knew more. Your words cannot be trusted. She slammed the cup down on the saucer. Vars received a soul circle, the girl asked the knight, and understood everything from his reaction. She asked directly if it could be that Vars was raising a witch, and that's why he wanted to catch other witches to feed to her. Although this was not the case, the knight was surprised by the Empress's train of thought. He made a mistake as soon as he entered this room. Was it a coincidence that Her Majesty arrived in the north at a time when the gentleman was in a difficult situation? She noted everything, from his breathing and pupil movement to any movement of his facial muscles. She was not interested in the answer to the question. She wanted to know if he knew everything. Your Highness, we have big problems. The knight mentally addressed his master, trembling with horror. At this time, Archduke Vars Belius was resting in his room, thinking about the current situation. Thoughts came into his head one after another, changing his mood from good to bad. But one thought still made him smile. Selena, although she was upset, will probably come to him today too because she is very afraid. However, at that moment he heard a knock on the window behind which Jart was located. The knight reported that it was not possible to hide anything from Her Majesty, and she already knows that they have received the soul circle and are looking for the witch. The knight added in a panic that it was only a matter of time before she realized that the lady was a witch, to which Vars only emotionlessly agreed. Then Jart asked with all possible seriousness for permission to go to the palace and kidnap the crown prince. They say he will not survive if Her Majesty dies. Having ordered his assistant to calm down, the Archduke said that although his sister had come here unexpectedly, he was prepared for this. The Crown Prince was invited under a suitable pretext, so he will be here in 10 days. By a suitable pretext, Vars meant the Empress, who had come to the Belias estate because she was interested in her brother's wife, but was now suffering from severe pain throughout her body and was literally on the verge of death due to the frost that had been raging in the north for a long time. Even being bedridden, she continues to call for her son if he is a real son. He should come quickly and show himself to his mother before something terrible happens. There is a high probability that the Emperor will come with the prince, but nothing can be done. But in reality, Vars knew his sister better than anyone else. If she wants something, she will definitely get it, and if necessary, she is even ready to deprive her opponents of all limbs. We need to come up with a plan before she turns her attention to Selena even more. They must keep their sister's beloved son close to them as insurance. Then she won't be able to act quickly without fear of harming her own son. It would be good to find that strange witch in bandages sooner, but it is better to work covertly than quickly, so it is worth being careful not to give the sister any more information, Vars added. Jart was about to leave, but Vars asked about his sister Metal. The gentleman seemed very interested in whether she had truly recovered completely. In fact, Vars is irritated that she keeps coming between him and Selena. The knight did not understand at all why this interested the gentleman, but she answered in the affirmative, which made Vars Belius wilt. If she were just a little sick, he could use her treatment as an excuse. And so he only became more irritated, remembering how the maid interfered with his relationship with Selena. Jart understood everything differently than it actually was, and was touched by the fact that the gentleman opened his heart to love and could now understand the feelings of other people. For him, too, family is more precious than anything in the world, and for Her Majesty, the Crown Prince is the main treasure. After he encountered perhaps his only weakness, his humanity was awakened. Finally, spring had come to the north. The knight rejoiced. The joyful knight said that thanks to the care of the master, his sister is now in very good condition. Her eyesight is also good, and she can move normally, so she does not need additional treatment. Vars was tired of listening to the knight's rantings, and besides, he missed Selena very much. At this time, the girl went out onto the balcony to breathe in the fresh evening spring air. There were billions of stars shining in the sky above her head. It really was a beautiful place. A sound below caught her attention, and looking down, she saw a rider on a horse. It was Archduke Wars Belius himself out for a walk. She looked at him with admiration. This man was her husband, the most reliable and handsome man in the world. Come to think of it, what happened to that man named Robin? If Selena hadn't known Vars so well, she would have thought that he had long since been eaten by rats and birds. But when she got to know him better, he turned out to be completely different. He is amazingly kind, caring, a little shy, but very attentive. The girl also remembered that he also gave her a bracelet. She immediately lifted her skirts to look at the gift dear to her heart. But she was interested in how he was filming. After all, it was Vars who gave it to her, and she wanted to treat it with care. But no matter how she twisted it, she couldn't see the clasp anywhere. The girl thought about it for a bit, but decided not to strain herself too much, because later she would ask Vars everything she wanted. And from these thoughts and pleasant memories, I blushed slightly. Although he is a little harsh, he is a good husband for her. Of course, his joke with the ghost was a bit harsh and hurt her a lot. But at least Selena doesn't think he would hurt someone without reason. Most likely he sent Robin to his hometown. He also warned him never to come to the north again. The beautiful girl looked dreamily into the distance from her balcony, breathing in the fresh evening air. But she was interested in where the soul of the real Selena, in whose body she found herself, went. Originally, all this was supposed to belong to her, but she wants to stay here forever. Does that mean she is greedy? She genuinely feels sorry for the real Selena. But maybe I should pretend she doesn't know anything and just move on. All this time, while Selena was thinking on her balcony, Vars was watching her carefully. And the girl's face was so pure, open, and inspired that it was impossible to take your eyes off her. This incredibly beautiful witch is my wife, the man thought with delight looking at her. Maybe she will come to his bedroom tonight, too. A new day has arrived, brightly illuminated by warm spring sunlight. The man's foot drummed nervously on the floor. Vars Belius sat on his chair like a statue and was indignant about why she hadn't come yesterday. He decided that it was nothing to worry about, and he waited for her at the table in the hope that he would be able to meet her. And the girl didn't keep him waiting. She came up to him with a smile and asked how he slept. In fact, the Archduke could not sleep and asked, slightly irritated, why she had not come yesterday. Selina sincerely didn't understand why she had to come to him yesterday at all. Then the man explained that he thought that she was afraid of Nephis and would come to him. The girl's mood instantly changed. She confirmed that this had happened before, but took a few steps back from him. Pouting, she added that he had made fun of her when he told her about Nephis. It was very mean. "Forgive me," Vars immediately bowed his head, feeling guilty. He added that he was wrong and asked for an apology again, looking very sincere. The girl opened one eye, thinking that she was not really angry anymore. But she likes how awkward he looks when he asks for forgiveness. And yet, one must know one's limits, she decided, and extending her hand to him, ordered him to take her to the fountain in the market. This attitude from the girl slightly offended Archduke Vars Belius, but he could not refuse her. Even though she treats him like her subordinate knight, he decides to play along and extends his hand in return. "It's an honor for me," he added, kneeling before her. And so the girl looked tenderly at the man sitting next to her. Vars also looked at her, slightly embarrassed by her direct, open gaze. They sat together by the fountain in the market square, enjoying each other's company. But the sweet couple had some involuntary observers. The Empress looked at them from the window of her hotel room and was surprised that they weren't ashamed to sit like that. At the same time, she asked her subordinate what was going on with the investigation and received the answer that they had begun to act much more covertly since the morning, which was why the investigation was progressing more slowly. Well, she let them know that she had started an investigation, so it was expected. Despite his stupidity, he is a beast on the battlefield. If the Northerners had conducted a quick investigation and used the overwhelming force of Vars, they would have brought the matter to an end. The main thing is not to block access to information, but to hide and keep silent about it later. In fact, Vars is not a nice guy at all, and her idiot subordinates don't even know how to get information. On the other hand, this girl looks like a small, weak, smiling animal. "Devon, find the witch," she ordered her subordinates. "Let them comb the area from Belius Palace and the surrounding lands to the 10th Millennium Snow Mountain itself and the borders of the central region, not forgetting to search the villages adjacent to the mine." It seems he tried to hide it from everyone, but no one can compare to the royal bloodhounds. Based on what they're doing, the chances that a witch is hidden somewhere around here are over 80%. How dare he cultivate a witch behind her back? A malicious smile touched the Empress's lips. But she decided to think that this was a gift for her beloved sister and enjoy what was happening. Her little brother was very charming. At this time, Selina had already sat near the fountain and suggested to her husband to go back. The girl was in the most wonderful mood, and so was Vars when he looked at her with love. They passed by a shop with jewelry, and the girl lingered for a moment looking at them. The Duke slowed down next to her, looking in surprise at what she was interested in. The girl's attention was drawn to the elegant blue hair clip. But after a few moments, she turned around and continued on her way as if nothing interested her. Selina's long blonde hair flowed beautifully in the wind. The man thought, if her hair is so long, then she definitely needs such things. But for some reason, she decided not to buy them. And he followed the girl, but was stopped by someone's tenacious hand. His gaze instantly sharpened. Who dared to grab him so brazenly? But when he turned to look the man in the face, a frightened cry escaped from his throat. "Buy it, idiot!" His sister herself stood in front of him, just one step away from rage. The true woman, Cynthia, was indignant at her own brother's stupidity. But Vars did not argue, especially since he himself had noticed this hairpin, and, turning to the seller, asked for one piece. A few moments later, he was already successfully catching up with Selina, who had gone ahead, holding a small linen bag. The girl noticed that he returned quite quickly, and she added that she didn't call him because it seemed he was talking to his sister. At this time, Vars thought that he, apparently, was not the only one who was afraid of his sister after all. She was a witch. Selina began to look around, wondering where Cynthia had gone. But when the Archduke asked why she was interested, she hesitated a little, explaining that she was worried because she did not know the rules of aristocrats, and she thought that it would be better to take his sister to the inner palace, if Vars did not mind after all. She is a member of his family who came from far away to see him. They are both confused because they cannot convict each other, but first they need to take care of their family. The family, from these words of the Duke, was filled with such a pleasant feeling that he had never experienced before. "I don't mind, I'll tell her," he answered softly, giving the girl his hand. But already in the room, he bitterly regretted his words. He was so intoxicated by that atmosphere that he probably went crazy. Why did he blurt that out? The most terrible disaster that should have been feared he personally brought upon himself. But he couldn't refuse Selena, who wanted it so much and with her whole appearance asked him to do so. I couldn't refuse, the Archduke finally gave in. But then a very exciting and at the same time frightening thought came into his head. It seems that now I will have to ask her to sleep together. I need to be close even in my dreams. It wasn't that he had any other goals. It was just that he could protect the little rabbit from the evil witch and nothing else. Duke Vars Belias firmly decided. The man decided not to waste time coming to such conclusions and immediately headed to his wife's room. Very quickly he found himself at the door of his wife's room. As soon as he knocked on the doors, they immediately swung open, and Selena stood right in front of him. The girl gasped in fear and tried to cover herself, but she failed. Blushing, she offered to come in, and he, apologizing, did so. He was embarrassed by the girl's appearance, so he tried not to look at her, but Selena was interested in why he came. At that moment, the door opened, and Anna, whom Selena had been waiting for, entered the room. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room became very tense, and somewhere in the distance a crow seemed to caw, which made Anna immediately express a desire to come back later and slam the door. Selena and Vars looked at each other awkwardly, realizing that the situation was becoming even more awkward. "Maybe we should sit down," the girl suggested, trying to ease the atmosphere. And in the end, they sat down opposite each other on the sofa, but still remained silent. The first to break the silence was Vars, who said that he had asked Jart to send a letter asking his sister to come. Selena was very happy about this and asked when Cynthia would arrive. In fact, she was worried because Vars looked very serious, but it seems she was still wrong. Was he worried that she might be uncomfortable? But in reality, he was only worried that the girls weren't wearing a top dress and she looked so light and so cute. But he added out loud that it was not yet clear whether his sister would come or not. They would find out when Jart came. And if his sister stayed in the inner palace, they would have to share a bedroom for a while. Vars blurted out the reason he had come to her room. The little rabbit raised his ears in surprise, looking with big blue eyes. Vars continued that his sister Cynthia entered the imperial family after she married, and he himself was not a frivolous person. So he thinks it would be a good idea to show her that he and Selena are on good terms. But he doesn't think she'll come at all, so there's no need to worry too much. "Am I the one who is worried here, and not you?" the girl asked mentally, lowering her eyes, trying not to look at the man sitting opposite. Besides, she was trying to hold back her tears, which she had never expected. Vars noticed that her mood was no longer so joyful, and it seemed that she was about to cry. If you were expecting a battle with a monster, anyone would cry. It's a pity that he can't soften on this issue. It's enough to just not say no. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and each of them turned towards the sound. But no one dared to stand up. They didn't want to disturb such a good atmosphere. "I'll come over, sit down like a true gentleman." Vars nevertheless stood up first. Opening the door, he asked rather rudely what he needed. Jart was behind the door. The knight was greatly agitated and was interested in what was written in this letter because Her Majesty immediately replied that she would arrive at the inner palace tomorrow. Crossing his arms over his chest, Vars explained that the Duchess had expressed a desire to invite her to come, so he had simply asked his sister's opinion. "So you're saying she'll come tomorrow? I get it," Vars replied, and tried to slam the door, but Jart stuck his foot out. The knight was worried and wondered if this was temporary, because tomorrow was a full moon, and they didn't know when she would return to the capital, but they couldn't allow her to be in the inner palace forever, and it wasn't that you were against it, but they needed to come up with an excuse for where she would leave. At this moment, Selena, who was in the room, listened attentively to the conversation, but did not understand everything. An awkward silence fell between Vars and Jart, each thinking that something unnecessary might have been said. Jart was most worried that tomorrow's situation might look like an eagle had been released into the forest with squirrels, and that was definitely not something he could allow. "Full moon," Archduke Belias drawled. And he added that in any case, they would sleep in the same bedroom tonight, at the same time ordering Jart to tell Anna to move the Duchess's things to his room. Without listening to the knight's objections, he persistently escorted him out of the room. Tomorrow was the full moon. Vars couldn't believe he had forgotten something so important. But now there are more important things to do, and he returned to the girl waiting for him. Vars told her that it was Jart who said that his sister would arrive tomorrow. He also added that he asked her to help her move into his bedroom right now, and also suggested taking a walk while it was a mess. Selena wrapped herself in a light robe but agreed to his proposal. The man noticed that if she continued to walk like that, she would definitely catch a cold, so she asked him to give her a towel. The girl did not expect this at all and was quite loudly surprised, but still fulfilled his request. Duke Vars Belias carefully dried his wife's fair hair with a fluffy towel. Selena sat, trying not to move, while Vars dried her wet hair. This had happened before, but now she felt very strange. It seemed that tonight would definitely be their first wedding night. The man carefully and thoroughly dried the girl's wet hair for quite a long time, enjoying her company. Removing the towel from his hair, Vars took a strand in his hands and ran it through it. "It tickles," the girl noted, and the man immediately recoiled. He was afraid that he had hurt her, and immediately tried to justify himself by saying that it was an accident, causing the girl to laugh, and she explained that it didn't hurt at all. And she thought that, on the contrary, these touches seemed so pleasant and gentle to her. Sitting like this with him in front of the fireplace, she forgets all the bad things that happened, and her heart flutters again. A few hours later, deep night fell on the palace, and the young people returned to the room. It seemed that everything was ready, and they could go in. It seemed like nothing had changed in the room. There were only things from the closet and the girl's dressing table in it. If they were to live in the same room with Vars, would his attitude towards her be the same as before, when he so tenderly dried her hair? If he acted this sweet every night, her heart would stop completely. At this moment, Selena was worried about something else that would spoil her mood enough. Vars was still standing at the threshold of the room, and the girl thought that he was going to come in. "I need to go somewhere. Go to bed first," he said in a colorless voice and left the room. Selena didn't even have time to be surprised before she found herself completely alone in the room. The man instantly slammed the door and leaned against it from the other side. He is so nervous that he cannot be alone with her. But first he needs to meet his sister. The girl looked at the locked doors for quite a long time. A huge lump of disappointment was spreading in her soul. Seriously, he just left, just like that, indifferently. The girl's hands clenched into fists powerlessly. A nasty and vile man. Tears appeared in her eyes and her legs gave out. Why did I even like him? She lowered her head and burst into tears. No one in the palace could even imagine what Selena Belias was feeling behind the closed doors of her husband's room. The Duke at this time went to the room where his sister was located. He gently knocked on the door and took a step forward into the room. A voice came from the half-open doors inviting him to come in, which Vars did, accompanied by a very strong, unusual smell. Cynthia sat at a table covered with all sorts of containers and, without turning around, asked what he wanted. But the brother still did not dare to say anything and stood silently watching his sister. "How should I know if you remain silent?" asked the Empress. But Vars countered that it was hereditary for them after all. She spent more time with her parents than he did, hadn't she heard anything? And now Cynthia remained silent in response, not rushing to answer his question. "Do you remember the story about the witch Beliasa and the giants she finally turned and asked her brother?" Vars remembered that when he was little, his mother told him this tale before going to bed. Yes, this story was passed down from generation to generation, like the myths about the foundation of the world. When the first great Duke Levidas Belias came to the north, there was already a witch and 2 giant brothers living in that place. They showed friendliness to Levidas, and the story goes that soon all 4 became friends and laid the foundation for the development of the north. The giants who have mastered the power of the ancient demon Crodon are radically different from the witches. They are hybrids born between Crodon and a human woman, and they directly inherit the demon's power. It was an offer for their family to receive help from transcendental beings. After the curse of Vars first appeared, Cynthia researched everything related to it, but found nothing that suggested someone was deliberately trying to hide it. As Vars knows, the average age at which noblemen in this country marry is around 28 years old. This is a big difference from their family, where they get married at about 18 years old. Isn't it strange? The Empress asked her brother, and received an affirmative answer. There is more backstory in a myth than in a fairy tale. The tragedy of Belias began with the witch falling in love with Levidas. The witch, who never shied away from any trouble, went mad with anger and betrayal when he married another woman. Everything that awaits you ahead will sink into oblivion. This is the curse she bestowed on Belias. But not all of the friends cursed Levidas. The giant, the respected eldest of the brothers, blessed the couple's eternal love. The giant, the mischievous younger brother, was full of curiosity to know how the couple's first night would go, but Levidas caught him and scolded him. However, he had no evil intent and was forgiven. In order to regain Levitus's trust, he was given spells for children that help stabilize and develop their inner world. Fortunately, the magic of the younger giant lifted the witch's curse of destruction. Therefore, the descendants of their family would have a chosen one at the age of about 10 years, and as soon as the curse manifested itself, a ceremony was held. After the first night had passed, the curse disappeared without a trace. These words of her sister made Vars think deeply. The reason he had to fight on the battlefield is because Vars couldn't get rid of the curse because their parents died too young. And when Cynthia found out all this, it was too late. Besides, Vars has already announced that he's leaving the war. He also said that he would get married right away, and so she thought that the curse would soon be lifted and did not even get involved with him. "You said it starts with marriage," Vars asked again, becoming more and more immersed in unpleasant feelings. "To be precise, marriage ceremonies," the sister answered, and a perfectly logical thought occurred to her since the curse was still unbound. "And you still haven't consummated the marriage?" she asked angrily, and Vars only lowered his head guiltily. He could not bear the thirst for murder that overcame him every 15 days. It seemed that among all his feelings and desires, only the vicious ones prevailed in him. When dawn came the next day and the sun lit up the horizon, he felt helpless. Due to the inability to control his own body for several hours, due to the fact that he became a real monster, it seemed to Vars that he would never be able to feel anything resembling happiness. The news that after the first wedding night, the curse disappeared without a trace, gave him some hope. And is it really the case that he went through all this only because there was no one nearby who could reveal the truth to him? Damn it, the sudden realization hit him painfully. It's not that he didn't do it. He didn't even have his first kiss. Cynthia only now realized what her brother had done, or rather, not done. "You still haven't consummated the marriage." His sister's words fell like a stone on his head. She thought with disappointment that all this was reminiscent of the fairy tales about love that her mother told her when she was a child, and that this blockhead, her brother, took after their father. Well, what a fool, the country needs him. But nevertheless, the girl said that she had prepared a potion that would help him tomorrow. And I asked him to stop sitting there like he was a dog abandoned in the rain. It looked really weird. The next morning, Vars was up very early and fully dressed, waiting for Selena to wake up. The girl slept peacefully in his bed, exhausted by the events of the previous night. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he thought that she was so disgusted by the thought of sharing a bed with him that she even fell asleep in tears. But there must be a reason why she accepted this offer. Will he be able to use this reason to persuade her for just one time? The man felt uncomfortable with himself and his thoughts. He felt like a real scumbag for having such a disgusting thought in his head. He put his hand into the inside pocket of his vest and pulled out a small linen bag. Vars wanted to give it to her, but the packaging was damaged, just like him. She probably hates the thought of loving a monster like him. But he agrees to remain cursed forever as long as Selena stays with him. The man carefully took a golden strand of hair and brought it to his nose, and the next second, frightened by his actions, he instantly recoiled from the bed, thinking about what to do. After a moment of panic, he quickly ran out of the room. However, the girl did not sleep all this time. She saw and felt everything he did. "Just now Vars was stroking my hair," she thought with a trembling heart, and her gaze fell on the linen bag lying nearby. She picked it up, thinking that the Archduke had forgotten something. Opening the bag, she was surprised to find in it a hairpin that she had caught her eye at the market. The girl instantly got out of bed and went to the mirror standing nearby. Trying on the hairpin, she began to think that Vars liked her. Could she think so? He made it clear that he did not want to share a room with her, but he prepared a gift for her. Selena thought that he was not at all. But by spending money, taking the time to look after her, she thinks she can afford to be more active with him in the future. At that moment, the Archduke returned to the room, taking the girl by surprise. He came in the midst of her thoughts, and her thoughts were rushing about like a frightened bird. The girl tried to find an excuse to touch him, maybe fix his hair, but decided that it was stupid. She decided to act actively to get closer to him, so she grabbed him by the clothes, unable to utter a word. But what to tell her to make it sound cute? What things do men find charming? "I was waiting for you," she said in a trembling voice, trying to look him in the eyes. However, this had the exact opposite effect, causing Vars to freeze in horror. Ashamed of her behavior, she realized that she had said something stupid. Selena lowered her head, thus burying her face in his chest. But Vars, surprised by her behavior, gently stroked her head. "Are you cold?" he asked the girl with concern, worried that she was sick. Selina pulled away from his hand, assuring him that she was fine. The Archduke insisted that she should stay warm, as she was wearing light clothing, so he sat the girl down on the bed and covered her with a blanket. In fact, he was extremely relieved that she was okay. For a second, he thought she had suffered aphasia from the shock of having to share a room with him, because she uttered words that were unusual for her. But now she started talking as usual, however. What the hell was that? Maybe she just wasn't fully awake yet. Selina's goal was achieved. The Archduke was charmed by her sweetness. Closer to lunchtime, a carriage quickly drove into the residence. The woman who emerged from it could not believe that she had to travel such a long way for Vars. "I was waiting for you," the head maid who greeted her said respectfully. "We haven't seen each other for a long time, Anna," the Empress replied amiably. The maid's eyes sparkled with genuine respect for this great woman. A few years ago, she sent her to the Bilius Duchy, with an order that only Knight Anna could carry out. And now the head maid Anna stood before her Empress with bated breath. Cynthia asked if anything interesting had happened during her absence and received a negative answer. Smiling, she added that she would take her word for it. For the sake of the Empress, Anna is ready to do anything, and she knows it. Knight Anna was one of the few people who inspired Cynthia's unconditional trust. "Then let's go visit my dear daughter-in-law," the woman said. When Anna was 20 years old, Lady Cynthia went to the capital to avenge her father. She also followed her to the central part of the country and joined the Imperial Knights. Her goal was to help the lady take revenge and make those people suffer in the same way. When the lady finally got her revenge, she personally asked her for something personal. "They say that this stupid youth literally lives on the battlefield," the Empress began, and she ordered Anna to help her brother Vars in Bellius and everything. A true knight, Anna accepted her mistress's order without question. She intentionally got injured and left the knights. Going to Bellius, she began to serve Vars. And now, after so many years, the Empress came to her homeland again and really wanted to see her daughter-in-law. She never even sent a letter asking how Anna was doing, but it didn't matter. Mrs. Cynthia was always like that. She swore to serve her for the rest of her life, and the Empress is the most influential person for her. It seems that whenever she is faced with a choice, the first thing she will think about is always the mistress. But Anna was not at all against this turn of events. She felt that this was her destiny. Selina tried on the new gift from her husband and happily showed off in front of the mirror, looking at herself from all sides. Vars also did not take his eyes off his beautiful wife for a second. "Beautiful?" the girl asked, turning around and smiling charmingly. And the man nodded vigorously, mentally adding that she was always the most beautiful. The girl blushed slightly and thanked him for such a wonderful gift. However, her words puzzled the Duke a little, and Selina was puzzled after him. "I meant you, not the hairpin," the man decided to explain. These words made the girl blush even more and become embarrassed, and she even mentally screamed in surprise. She couldn't say anything. She just continued to blush silently, not knowing what to do with herself from embarrassment. Watching her reaction, Vars was surprised, thinking that this couldn't be. But it seemed that she was hearing compliments about her appearance for the first time. A pleasant warmth spread through the man's body because he really considered his wife beautiful. The next moment, he was next to her. "You didn't know how beautiful you were?" he asked, holding out his hand to her. Vars carefully brushed a strand of light hair away from her face and ran his hand over it. The intimate moment was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Jart who arrived, and he got quite scared when, in response to his knock, something crashed loudly from the other side. The next moment, the door opened slightly, and Duke Belius's face appeared in it, wondering what had happened. The assistant handed the gentleman the documents, saying that an eagle had just arrived, and the papers contained what he needed to know about their squirrel. "What other squirrel of ours?" the Archduke began to get furious. This time, Selina did not silently listen to their conversation, and looking out from behind her husband, greeted Jart. The knight was glad to see his lady and asked if she had slept well. Selina thanked him for his concern and added that if the conversation was going to be long, they should go and sit down. Jart was about to step into the room, but Vars stopped him. "The conversation is over." The Archduke did not accept objections, and the knight had to agree. Vars closed the door behind him, pleased that he had finally gotten rid of the extra person. But Selina suddenly said that she would like to go outside. "I don't think we've even unpacked all our things yet, so you'll go later," the man replied. At the same time, he put into her hands the documents that Jart had brought. Taking these papers, Selina was surprised to see her portrait and realized that this was information about the real Selina. For the first second, she was afraid that her secret had been revealed, and she looked up at her husband with trepidation. Vars noticed her concern, but he didn't mean anything bad, and so he just smiled sweetly at the girl, thereby calming her down. "You said you had amnesia. I asked you to find some information. Maybe it will help you restore your memory," he added. Selina thanked him sincerely, feeling some relief from his explanation. "Would you like me to remember everything?" the girl asked excitedly. The man replied that it didn't really matter to him, and Selina clutched the paper in excitement. She'll be living with him in the north now anyway, so her past doesn't matter. But he thought she might find this information useful. To be honest, Vars would like her to continue to remember nothing and remain an unknown witch. His greatest fear is that one day her memories will return, and she will suddenly leave because she wants to return to her hometown. Nothing in the world matters as long as she stays by his side. The girl was glad that her past did not matter to him. However, her gaze pulled out one line from the document "He loves wine" from the Lafon province. For some reason, this particular line bothered her greatly. She carefully reread it again, trying to understand the meaning, and realized what was bothering her, because it seemed they had already discussed something like this. Then she almost gave herself away. At a recent dinner with Var's sister, she answered without thinking that her city was in the southwest, where there were always lots of flowers and it was very humid. However, this memory brought her some very strange feelings and pulled even earlier memories along with it. "Don't even touch any other alcohol. You must drink only 1 glass of wine from the Lafon region." The words of a man came to mind. He gave her an order and asked if she understood, to which Selina replied that she would take it into account. Previously, she had obeyed this man without question since she no longer had any choice. Now the documents fell out of the girl's hands. She didn't understand what had just happened. The Archduchess staggered as if she was about to fall. Could these really be the memories of the real Selina? And while the restless Vars held the girl by the shoulders, she thought that it was not her will, but it was she who stole the body, husband and life of the real Selina. However, Celine's true soul, which had everything taken away from her, still resides in this body. And although she cannot get back what is rightfully hers, she clearly wants it. Vars was genuinely worried about his wife's condition, noticing that she had turned pale and could barely stand on her feet. Looking at the pile of papers scattered around, he assumed it was because of these documents, but there was nothing special written there, just the ordinary life of an illegitimate child of a noble family, and it wasn't even her real life. Maybe that was the problem, he thought. At that moment, the girl came to her senses and quietly called her husband by name. "Do you think I'm beautiful?" she asked, her eyes so sad. Without hesitation, the man replied that of course he thought so. He hoped that his words would make the girl smile. However, her expression did not change at all, and she remained silent. Moreover, she moved his hand away and took a step back. Was his answer wrong? He thought she was happy just now. But why did her mood suddenly change so drastically? Vars wanted her to cheer up after hearing the answer she wanted, but he had one more way to cheer her up, and then he asked her if she would go with him, since he had business in the city, and it worked immediately. Feeling increasingly tender feelings for the girl standing before him, the Archduke leaned slightly and offered her his hand. Selina's mood improved a little, and she made a decision. "And she put your hand into his big male palm." Then she pulled him along with her, surprising him with the fact that they would go so quickly. The girl purposefully headed towards the exit of the palace, but her thoughts wandered somewhere far away. People are so sneaky. She knows he's not being kind to her because of her looks, but she can't believe he's asking such stupid questions. She is sad that this is not her real face, and she envies the real owner of this body. She also feels guilty for stealing someone else's life, fearing the pain that awaits her in the future. The pain that will overtake her when Yumi's soul disappears, and Vars won't even notice. The moment he extends his hand to her, these feelings seem to evaporate. This wonderful man looks at her with such eyes to lift her spirits. But still, the girl decided that she would think about the future later, and now she would just enjoy the moment. She doesn't know what will happen next. The person she likes now is Vars Bilius, and she will definitely be his beloved, the girl decided, and stopped for a second, turning sharply towards him. In a rush of feelings, she pressed herself against the broad male chest in some semblance of an embrace. The Archduke immediately felt the touch of a young, firm breast on his hand, and out of the corner of his ear, he heard her question about what business he had in the city. Trying to contain his rising feelings, he mentally wondered what business the Grand Duke of the North could have in the city. It was just an excuse to make her feel better. But he couldn't say this out loud to her, not daring to upset his wife, especially seeing how happy she was at that moment. "Since you've decided to live in a separate bedroom, you need to choose a carpet that you like," he began. But he suddenly stopped short, doubting that this would be a sufficient excuse. Deciding that this would not do to justify his actions, he suddenly fell silent, but could not think of anything better. Did she really understand everything, Vars thought, not daring to add anything else? But the girl decided that this was a great idea and that she needed to buy some thin blankets. At the same time, she thought that she still needed to meet his sister, while Vars could not believe that she accepted such a ridiculous answer. And so they were walking through the village in the direction of the store when they suddenly ran into a man. Right in front of them stood the Empress herself, the sister of Vars Balius. The Duke mentally tried to drive her away, and Selena was incredibly happy that Cynthia also decided to go out into the city. And she added that she wanted to visit her earlier, but thought that she was too busy getting ready, so she didn't do it, but was glad of the chance meeting. "Then let's have dinner together," the Empress suggested, seeing that her little brother didn't want it so much that she wanted to insist on it even more. Of course, the girl was happy about this, but Vars immediately became depressed. And now they were sitting together at the dinner table, enjoying the food offered. Vars put pieces of various food on Selena's plate time after time, thus taking care of her. Vars Balius is known not only for his brute strength, but also as a natural strategist. Looking at everything she has done so far, he is sure that she cannot eat much because she has a small stomach, but she definitely likes food. In other words, having dinner together is a great opportunity to grow in her eyes. "That's enough for me. You can just start eating already." The girl tried to stop his favor. And when the man asked if she didn't like it, she, of course, began to deny it, saying that the food was delicious, but she didn't have time to eat it all. The Empress watched this impromptu couple from the sidelines, thinking that her brother was such a thickhead. Selena seems to have only a little affection for him and treats him like a husband, but he himself is beside himself. "Vars, I've thought about this before. Why don't you address your wife properly?" she asked her brother. She added that she understands the awkwardness of a marriage of convenience, but when he behaves like that, people say there are no adults at home. So from now on, he must call her darling, which made Vars instantly turn red as a tomato. The Archduke did not understand why this witch, his sister, was helping him at all. The Empress at this time thanked Selena for treating her brother well. But if he does something wrong, then she should tell her, and she will scold him. But Cynthia also thought that although Selena looked a bit silly, a witch was a witch. Her intentions were certainly questionable, but it wouldn't hurt to win Selena's favor. And the girl at this time was incredibly happy and literally glowed from this whole situation. After all, her daughter-in-law is now on her side, and now she feels much calmer because they have become one family. "It's true, my dear." She awkwardly addressed her husband for the first time. Vars tried his best to keep a calm face, but his cheeks turned red, and the girl's words hit him right in the heart. A long time ago, the capital's tea house witnessed an awkward situation. A young man accidentally dropped a cup of hot tea on a young girl's light dress. It was then that Cynthia first met her husband, the current emperor, and she thought that she could use him. The girl thought strategically from an early age. Having decided to take revenge on the emperor, who was guilty of her father's death, she forgot about her human feelings and was ready to act by any means necessary. The hunt was for any witches. She used all the ghosts up to the Empress. And even this smiling, carefree man. The young man beamed with happiness and said that he had nothing at all, but marrying her was like a dream. And although Cynthia's goals were completely different, this attitude towards her won her over. She was sure that there was power in fear, and she acted accordingly even many years later. When she dealt with everyone, the capital's aristocrats still fear her. Even her biological younger brother fears her, and not without reason. But in Selena, she sees a look in which there is not a drop of fear or evil thoughts. In this, she is very similar to her husband, the Emperor. It would be nice if she weren't a witch, Cynthia thought ruefully. After finishing their meal, they went outside together, and Selena immediately added that it had been a wonderful meal. The happy girl literally danced her way down the street, and Vars was detained by the Empress. She threw a small bottle into his hands, and only then explained that it was the medicine she had promised him. "It contains therin, so you might want to think twice about taking it or not. Therin is a powerful poison that can kill a dragon with just one drop. I'm not sure about the medicine I prepared myself, Vars remarked sarcastically, to which Cynthia only chuckled. She was sure of everything. You won't die, she added to reassure him. Noticing that her brother and sister had fallen behind, Selina called them and, calling her husband dear, asked him to come here quickly. Okay, the man immediately responded to the call, not paying attention to the conversation with his sister. However, he did not stop clutching the bottle she had given him. Much in his life depended on this little bottle. The young people headed down the street, strolling after a hearty lunch. Selina admired everything around her. She looked at each counter, and soon the husband and wife pulled ahead a little. They were literally enveloped in an aura of love that bounced off the Empress herself. Watching them, the woman thought about everything that was happening. Soon after Selina arrived north, information came from Anna. It contained a report from Nephis, who holds a fairly high position among the ghosts, and noticed something unusual. Nephis can make decisions independently and feel confident in her territory, and if she smells her obvious enemy, a witch, then this is worth paying attention to, and, as a result, her report can be relied on 99%. There is at least one witch in this town. Cynthia's gaze landed on the glowing, happy Selina. She doesn't know her true intentions, but she seems to be a nice girl. If we think about it soberly, she is too good to be a witch. When people like her and Vars see such a small, harmless creature, they naturally want to get their hands on it. She called out to her brother and his wife with regret, and she said that she had some things to do, so she would go. What a pity, I thought we would walk here together. Selina was genuinely upset, and Vars at that moment became very angry that she dared to upset his wife. But Cynthia added that they would meet again in the inner palace, or they could walk together next time. Okay, next time for sure, the girl rejoiced. And the Empress confirmed this once again, looking into the sincere eyes of her daughter-in-law and smiling faintly. As she left, she placed her hand on her brother's shoulder, and in a whisper so that only he could hear, she added that he should behave well. Don't be stupid, she said to her dumbfounded brother, her voice threatening. The next moment, she turned to Selina and said goodbye with a smile. Selina also smiled and said goodbye to her, while Vars was shocked by his sister's behavior. This witch is sucking out energy, he thought, and wondered why he was swearing. Darling, let's go, Selina asked him, gently touching his hand. Instantly, Vars's soul left his body, illuminated by a happy pink light. Okay, darling, the man answered in the same tone, and the happy couple continued on their way to the store. Soon they entered the very store they had been going to. When choosing a blanket for the room, they discussed different options. Selina decided that she liked one of them, so she would take him. And this, and this, so pretty, she added, handing all the things over to Vars. The man carefully examined everything she gave him, and she thought that her tastes did not at all match her appearance, while the girl at that time looked at the things with delight, thinking that everything here was to her taste. And among all this, what she likes most of all, of course, are not the things in the store, but something more. The man next to her is her husband, Archduke Varsbelius. The girl laughed happily at her thoughts, covering herself with the blanket she was holding in her hand. And even though the Duke didn't understand what made her laugh so much, he still invited her to go. The girl extended her hand to him and happily agreed. By evening, Jart was walking down the palace corridor with a little anxiety, thinking about the full moon today and hoping that the master had not forgotten about it because of his date. Methel walked quickly towards him, very happy to see him, but he stopped his sister, noting that now was not the best time and it would be better for her to come another time. The girl reluctantly agreed, but still added that she wanted to introduce him to someone. Jart thought it was some young man, and hastened to reply that it was not worth it. But Methel asked, offended, what he was even thinking about, and said that she meant the doctor who cured her illness. In this case, the brother agreed, and together they went to meet the doctor. All this time, Jart did nothing but stay close to the master, and she, his sister, returned to the north less than a month ago. The beloved daughter of a noble northern family suddenly and very seriously ill, and some unknown doctor accidentally cured her. This question tormented the knight very much. Not only does he maintain a good relationship with the patient, but he also gets to know the head of the family. It's really elegant, and also very suspicious coming from a stranger. Considering that Metal had personally arranged the meeting, Jart assumed that it was the healer who had insisted on it. He really is very good, Metal said happily to her brother, smiling. Well, let's see. Jart was embarrassed by his sister's reaction, and he awkwardly agreed with her statement. Late in the evening, there was deathly silence in the basement. Jart was already prepared and on duty near the massive doors when Varsbelius came down to him. He asked how his meeting with Her Highness had gone, to which the gentleman replied that he had told his wife not to wait for him and to go to bed first. "What? That's what they said?" the knight asked, discouraged. Vars was surprised why they had the same reaction to his words. A little earlier, Selina asked in exactly the same way if it was true that he would not sleep here today. The knight opened the door for the gentleman, inviting him to come in, and added that that was not the problem, to which Vars replied that there were no problems. Jart also expressed hope that if the gentleman drinks all the alcohol that is here and falls into a deep sleep, then everything will end there, and he hopes that everything will go smoothly. Vars entered a room completely filled with barrels of alcohol, and the door closed tightly behind him. He took out of his pocket a small bottle of the medicine that his sister had given him. Looking at him, Vars thought that this potion was made by a witch, so he shouldn't die. But he hadn't heard that there were people who took Therom and survived after that, so he doesn't even know what the side effects might be. However, he had no choice, and the only hope that the night would pass peacefully was alcohol and a small bottle. Without thinking twice, he poured the liquid into his mouth. Before, people just drank and didn't think about any side effects. Even if something went wrong, Jart would take care of everything, the Archduke decided, uncorking the first barrel of alcohol. But his thoughts were about something completely different, or rather about a certain person. When Selina was choosing a blanket in the store, she looked so happy and expressed her joy so sincerely. And Vars now reproached himself for not even being able to kiss this lovely girl. Even if he got punched in the face, it was worth trying. After all, she is his wife, the man thought, feeling the effects of the alcohol he had drunk. What is she doing now? The man wondered, closing his eyes. At this time, Selina was sitting in their shared room in front of the mirror. The girl had just come out of the bathroom and was thinking that her husband wouldn't come today, but at least they had chosen a new carpet and blanket. If something happened, why can't he just tell her she is his wife after all? She doesn't deserve his trust. The girl became sad. She wants to stay with him a little longer, because no one knows what will happen tomorrow. In the reflection of the mirror, the girl saw a small chest standing behind her. This was the box with the things of the real Selina, she realized, and at that moment 2 ghosts appeared behind her, watching her. And while the girl was looking closely at the chest, these ghosts were looking closely at the girl. It seemed that the night passed quite calmly, and behind closed doors it was quiet. At some point, the doors started to twitch from the inside, and the lock hanging on them started to shake, which greatly frightened Jart, who was guarding the doors. A few moments later, several powerful blows were heard. They were followed by such a loud sound and a push of such enormous force that the door literally crumbled into pieces. And on the threshold appeared the Archduke in his bloodthirsty state. His gaze spoke for itself. The monster demanded blood. Having no idea what was happening in the basement of the palace, the girl saw a small chest standing behind her in the reflection of the mirror. This was the box with the things of the real Selina, she realized, and at that moment 2 ghosts appeared behind her, watching her. Selina sat down in front of the chest in confusion, wondering what to do. She debated whether she should just leave it alone until the real Selina returned, or throw it all out and fill the box with new things. But for now, the girl decided to see what was there, even though she was afraid of feeling out of place again. Now this was her life, her memories, and she had to move on. "I'll have a look and then decide," the girl decided, gathering her courage. She carefully opened the lock and lifted the lid of the mysterious chest. Inside the box were neatly stacked several books, another small chest, and a bow and arrows. And that's all. The girl was surprised seeing such wealth. Taking only these things, leaving her hometown and coming to the far north, this is what Selina did. What was she thinking at that moment? Did she expect that her body could be taken away? And Selina realized that she couldn't throw it away, but she thought about how to humanely get rid of all these things. It would be better if there were good dishes here, and not just personal things, because if she threw it away, she would have nightmares. At the very top of the chest lay items that were not typical for a girl. The girl took the bow and arrows in her hands in surprise. Feeling strange, she rose to her feet, still holding the weapon in her hands. And then she pulled the bowstring, although she had never done this before. Something so familiar. What kind of feeling is this? She wondered. And then I realized that she pulled the bowstring so naturally, although she had never done archery in her life. It just seemed like it. Enough thinking about it, she tried to get rid of the obsessive thoughts, and all this time the ghosts were watching her closely. However, she was distracted from her painful thoughts by a loud noise outside the room. It's so noisy outside today. What's going on there? The girl went out onto the balcony of her room, worried. Outside on the street, she saw a huge destruction, in the center of which Vars was waving his sword, surrounded by his guards. However, even though the Duke was alone, his strength was incomparable with the strength of all the knights combined. Vars's gaze is like that of a possessed monster thirsty for blood. Selena wanted to scream to stop him, but she was not allowed to do so. Cynthia, who was next to her, covered the girl's mouth with her hand and motioned for her to be silent. Having let her go, the Empress asked Selena to calm down because now it would be stupid to try to separate them. At this moment, the knights took a defensive position, expecting the attack of the master, and Vars did not make them wait long. Swinging his sword, he struck his knights with a force greater than human strength. Selene was horrified by how brutally they were fighting, and what if Vars was seriously injured? Determined to stop this, the girl headed to her room. Then the Empress detained her, insistently asking her to stand there and do nothing. "And what can you do?" she asked the girl. Selena couldn't answer. She really couldn't do anything in such a situation. And then the Empress handed her a bow that was lying nearby for shooting. "Selena, shoot," she said confidently. Taking the bow in her hands, the girl looked at it in surprise, not understanding what they wanted from her. Is Cynthia telling her to shoot the arrow when she doesn't even know how to do it? And it seems that the Empress is not joking. She speaks quite seriously and confidently. The girl looked at her hands holding the weapon in complete confusion, completely not understanding what she should do. Considering all the information that Cynthia received, it can be said that she knows the most about Selena's past. They checked everyone who had ever spoken to her, so they were able to collect a huge amount of information, including about relatives. And this is quite enough to recreate Selena's life in her hometown. But the more she learns about her, the stranger she seems to her. The girl who rode a horse every time but never rode one in the north. She loves flowers and herbs so much that she grows them herself to dry and brew tea. But in the north, she doesn't even pay attention to flower shops. The village girl living in the southwest was definitely not a witch. No witch has ever forgiven the kind of father she had. The one who appeared in the north before her eyes? Who is she? That was the main question. Even if Selena can do everything else, the experience can't be faked. They say she loved horseback hunting, so she should know what to do just by looking at a bow. Whether she became a witch or the witch changed her, she had to take a risk, Cynthia decided. "Pull the bowstring. If you don't help, Jart might lose his arm," the Empress added, urging Selena to take action. Her words had an effect because the girl raised her head confidently. The red moon was in full force, making Vars Bellius thirst for blood. As Cynthia said, Selena can't let this happen. If this continues, it will be dangerous for both Vars and Jart. So the girl put an arrow into the bow and took a comfortable position on the balcony to shoot. She only prayed for Vars to come to his senses. Raising her hand, she concentrated her gaze and directed it towards the raging Archduke. Gathering her courage, the girl pulled the bowstring and released the arrow. The Empress created a potion that combined a powerful sleeping effect and a spell that slightly weakened the instincts and turned the thirst for destruction into a thirst for affection. If she had more time, she would have tried to make this thirst express itself in a more noble way. Unlike the witch who cursed the Bellius family, there is something else. The blessing bestowed by the giants, descendants of the ancient demon Croden, is likely to be much more powerful. So the spell she casts will merge with the giant's blessing and be able to suppress the curse. They say that after the first wedding night, the curse will be lifted. As long as Selena plays her role well, there is nothing to worry about. The arrow fired by the girl whistled a centimeter away from the raging Archduke, although it did not harm him. But it made me pay attention to the person who released her. Selena stood on the balcony of her room, her bow drawn, ready to release another arrow at any moment. The first time she put an arrow into the bowstring, she experienced a very unusual feeling. She didn't know what to do after the bowstring was pulled. With strange feelings, her body moved on its own. After firing her first arrow, she was surprised to notice that she had almost hit the target. Although the arrow did not harm Vars, he nevertheless drew attention to the shooter who had fired it, which made Selena a little scared. Driven by the curse that had given him strength, the Archduke left his previous victim and turned towards the girl. In one jump, he found himself on the second-floor balcony where Selena had just been. Although Jart was seriously wounded, he was worried about catching up with his master, because if he came to his senses, he would definitely die from what he had done. But before he could move, another man approached him, which surprised him greatly. With her finger to her lips, Empress Cynthia forced the knight to calm down and not twitch. She pointed out to him that the sun would rise in just a few minutes. And besides, she will take responsibility, so he should stay where he is. Well, if something happens, the woman thought, she will have to go and not this weakling. At this time, frightening events were unfolding on the balcony of the Archduchess's room. Selina thought with horror about what she had done. After all, Vars's gaze was completely abnormal, and it scared her very much. She tried to calm him down by calling him by name and carefully backed away. However, the slipper fell off her foot and the girl tripped and began to fall. Selina didn't notice how, backing away, she reached the bed in the middle of the room and fell right onto it. She panicked and wondered where Vars's sister was, mentally asking for help. Duke Bilius towered over her like a huge, frightening statue. However, a pleasant, sweet smell reached the man's nose, and his thirst for blood subsided. But now he felt another thirst, and without realizing it, he reached out his hand to the girl. Selina closed her eyes, preparing for what was to come next, scared and vulnerable. However, nothing happened next, and the girl had to open her eyes to understand what was happening. The man was still hovering over her, but now he was almost on the bed above her, his head down. "Vars, have you come to your senses yet?" she decided to ask. At that moment, the Duke, like a wild animal, sniffed and raised his eyes to her. "Is everything okay now?" the girl continued asking as the man continued to approach her. "You still smell so sweet," he replied stupidly when his face was a few centimeters from hers. Such a striking change in his behavior surprised the girl very much, and she froze in place from surprise, while Vars simply looked at her with a smile. The next moment he touched her shoulder, forcing the girl to lie down on the bed. Selina didn't resist, not understanding what was happening, but with her sixth sense, she guessed what would happen next. The man hovered over her, unbuttoning his shirt at the same time and smiling mysteriously. "Selina," he said her name in a tone he had never used before. He hovered over her and placed his hands so that she could not escape. The girl was very scared, thinking that he would eat her. Gently touching her body, the man pressed his lips to her neck with delight, inhaling the sweet scent emanating from her. Then, with one light movement, he touched her hair, running his fingers from her neck to her bare shoulder. Just a second ago, the man was obsessed with bloodlust, but now he couldn't stop, as if he was obsessed with her scent. Selina, enchanted, barely found the strength to resist. She didn't want their first kiss to be like this. "Vars, come to your senses," the girl resisted. However, the man seemed not to hear her, and slowly moved his lips closer to hers. The first ray of dawn sun was shining through the open window of the room, and this sun had an immediate effect on the possessed man, as if he woke up for a second from a tender, sweet sleep. And he saw a girl spread out on the bed in front of him, clearly frightened by his behavior. Her neat pink lips beckoned him. All he felt was how he wanted to kiss her, and he couldn't resist this feeling. But the breaking dawn forced him to wake up from this oblivion, and the girl lying in front of him was shaking with fear, waiting for what he would do to her. Realizing what was happening, Vars instantly recoiled from her. The man immediately apologized for his behavior, regretting that he dared to do that to her. And the next moment, he remembered everything he had done. The way he attacked Jart, and the way he smelled the sweet scent coming from Selina. And now the girl was shaking in front of him on the bed, clearly afraid of him. Her soft pink lips attracted his gaze, never ceasing to beckon. Vars seemed to find himself captivated by the sweet, alluring aroma for a moment again. It seemed difficult for him to resist the girl who lay so openly before him and literally called him. But she still shook and turned away from him, waiting for the inevitable. But this inevitable never came. Vars realized that he was still not himself, and was surprised at what he was thinking about now. And the man also hopes that she will feel a thrill when she remembers her first kiss, experiencing a feeling of tenderness. But now, without the intoxicating attraction, Vars gently stroked the girl's cheek, brushing away a strand of hair that had fallen onto her forehead. "Forgive me." The man carefully leaned down and kissed the frightened girl on the forehead, which greatly surprised her. For the first few moments, the girl looked at him in surprise, because she was preparing for the worst possible outcome. And then her eyes filled with tears, and Selina burst into tears. Sitting up in bed, she said through her tears that she thought he was going to eat her. Holding the girl in his arms, Vars calmed her down, saying that he had not intended to do anything like that, and asked for forgiveness for his behavior. "I'm sorry I scared you. I never meant to hurt you." He hugged the slightly shaking Selina. The girl was crying at this time and felt a huge relief that it was all over, and hid on his chest. While all these events were unfolding in the palace, something was also happening in one of the houses in the village. A figure in a long red cloak stood in front of the mirror. The hooded man looked at his bandaged body in the mirror. And finally, he threw off his cloak completely, intending to examine every inch of his body. A girl looked at herself in the mirror, remarkably similar to Selena Belias, but completely bandaged so that only her eyes remained. "Rowan," a voice was heard from the side. The bandaged figure turned around nervously. "Don't look." He irritably threw on his cloak, to which his interlocutor replied that he hadn't looked, and that it was so dark here that nothing could be seen. But he asked not to take off his cloak, worrying that the spell might not work properly. Rowan assured him that he need not worry about this. But the long-haired young man added that he was not saying this out of excitement, and was surprised that his interlocutor could not understand what he felt. And Rowan really could not understand, especially if there was so much hatred in his words. And let her better say when the effect of the spell ends, because he wants to quickly become perfect and go to him. "Wait a few more days, you know. It takes time." A third character has appeared in the room. The bandaged man was indignant that everything was taking too long. The third person turned out to be the same healer who cured Methil, and he asked Rowan to just rest a little, and he also watched that girl. And there is something useful that can help them in their work. After the night's incidents, Vars took a shower and again scolded himself for being such a brainless idiot. From the moment his conscience began to return to him, he regretted that he had missed such a wonderful opportunity. Selena was literally a centimeter away from him, lying on the bed almost naked. "She is so charming," the man admired, blushing at the memory. He remembered that he had been moving very quickly due to the madness of the curse, and couldn't he have at least kissed her once? "Damn, you idiot!" He angrily slapped his foot on the wet tiles. At that moment, a worried voice came from behind the door, asking if everything was okay. It was Selena who heard some kind of rumble and was worried about Vars. The Duke replied that everything was fine and wanted to say something else, but stopped short. An unexpected thought came into his head, which he liked. And he replied, without leaving the bathroom, that he felt a little dizzy, which worried the girl on duty at the door even more. "Are you sure you're okay?" "Open the door." She pounded on the door, sincerely worried about her husband. At that moment, Vars came out of the bathroom, deliberately not putting anything on himself except a small towel around his hips. Without thinking, Selena threw herself into his arms, still worried. She offered him to lean on her. She would help him get to the sofa. Vars seemed to be twice or even 3 times heavier than the girl, but she tried her best to support him. The man thought that if he suddenly lifted her by the scruff of the neck, she would not even be able to object, but with such confidence she wanted to help him. Pretending to be tired, he agreed to her help, thinking that this was an expression of her affection and was inexpressibly happy about it. The girl was ready to help him in any way, so she hugged him even tighter. Having apologized, Vars leaned on her with all his weight. It was obvious that Selena was having a hard time, but she didn't mind at all, ready to do everything that depended on her. At this point, the Archduke decided to play a little joke and pretended to fall, causing Selena to stagger in horror as well. When he drew level, he apologized, adding that his legs had given way for a second. Reaching the bed, he sat her down and asked if she wanted something to eat. At that moment, Anna knocked on the door and was allowed to enter. Vars asked the maid, who came in, how Jart was feeling, to which the girl replied that he would most likely wake up tomorrow. Thanks to the Duchess, the knight did not receive significant damage. Noting that the lady had tried very hard, but Selena did not consider it her merit, and noted that it was all thanks to the advice of His Highness's sister. Hearing the mention of his own sister, Vars immediately became angry and sternly ordered breakfast. He didn't like that Selena's attention had switched from him to other people, and the girl at that time was thinking about having breakfast and checking on Jart. However, the first to visit Jart, who had been injured in the battle with the Archduke, was Cynthia Belias. She explained that she had something to check, and she had done as he had asked, so she might as well thank her, and at the same time handed him the bottle of medicine. Jart asked emotionally if this had anything to do with the fact that the master's anger had suddenly softened before Her Highness. "It's not anger. It's a curse that is passed on to the heirs of Belias," the Empress corrected in an ominous voice. The knight thought it would be good if Her Majesty could put the Duke on a leash, but it worked even better than he expected. But he, the one who had been with him since childhood, was mercilessly attacked. Although it was sad, he was only able to submit to the Archduchess. With her special sense, Cynthia recognized that there was someone behind the door, And she continued to tell Jart that the curse can be lifted by marrying the person you truly love. It's so romantic. There was a knock at the door and Anna asked permission to enter. She immediately inquired about the knight's condition, and the Empress was interested in how Vars was feeling. The maid replied that the gentleman had decided to use the bedroom on the top floor for now, and he said that he had a headache after taking medicine from some quack, hinting at his sister. It was as if a hurricane had swept through the corridors of the palace, opening and closing the doors of the rooms with incredible speed. Selina plopped down on her own bed at great speed. What did I just hear? The girl asked herself, dumbfounded. Some time ago, she finally got around to visiting Jart in his room. She lamented that even if it was because of the curse, she still couldn't cripple her subordinates, and she was sorry that everything turned out this way. As she was about to knock on the door, she heard Cynthia talking about a way to lift the curse on the Bellius family. You can break the curse by marrying the person you truly love. So romantic. This is definitely a curse that the author of this book created. And how cruel it is towards Vars, because in the original, he never knew love in his entire life and lived alone until his death. But what is true love anyway, the girl thought, hugging the pillow. She's not sure, it's all so complicated, but still. I won't give up. Selina was determined she would definitely be happy with Vars. In the midst of her thoughts, the Archduke entered the room and asked if she had seen Jart yet. The girl answered in the affirmative, but did not explain all the circumstances. She noticed that Vars was going somewhere, and the man explained that he needed to see Jart, then go briefly to the training ground and to the office of the outer palace. Having told the girl to rest, he headed out of the room, but Selina asked him to stay. We can talk a little. The girl was very determined. Her serious mood did not escape the Archduke, and he readily stopped. Last night, this curse, you know how to break it. The words came hard to her, and Vars immediately understood what she meant. Seeing his reaction, Selina apologized for her overconfidence, but she couldn't directly say that she had overheard someone else's conversation. Raising her clear eyes to her husband, the girl asked if she could help him with anything. That's enough, of course. I know how to remove the curse. Her husband rudely interrupted her, adding that it was too complicated and she couldn't help in any way. He would make sure that something like this never happened again. And with these words, he left the room. Vars slammed the door loudly, leaving the girl confused. Selina sincerely wanted to help her husband remove the curse, but why does he completely refuse her help? He seems to think that there is no such thing as true love for them. At that moment, the girl felt so lonely and lost. At that moment, Vars was nervously and quickly walking along the corridors of the palace. She asks if he knows how to remove the curse. Of course he does. But if he told her about this method, she would be horrified. And most likely she would agree to help him because she is so kind. And they would spend their first wedding night, after which the curse would be lifted. Or, on the contrary, he will refuse without even looking at him, and perhaps even hate him. If he was rejected so coldly, the man stopped in the middle of the corridor. If she refuses him, he won't be able to bear it. If this happens, his already difficult life will finally lose all meaning. It doesn't matter. The main thing is that she simply doesn't find out, the Archduke decided. He needs to hide this ridiculous way of removing the curse from her. Vars Belayaz finally reached Jart's room and heard voices coming from there. Didn't you say you would make a medicine to help me deal with this? The man instantly became angry, bursting into the room.